Hi, everybody. Welcome to sCOPe Livestream 2023. We're glad that you've joined us. We are going to begin with the worldwide premiere of the sCOPe documentary. So without any further ado, I think I will get that going for you. So here we go.
The use of e-cigarettes is associated with an increased risk of heart attack, heart disease, and stroke.
The federal government today warned Americans not to use e-cigarettes.
And in terms of heart and lung disease, it's looking about as bad as smoking.
They can cause poisoning.
I think there's a tremendous number of misperceptions about vaping, and we see it in the polling of people who have become actually less well informed over time.
Most people think vaping is far more harmful than it actually is. I think what this harmful information is doing is actually killing people who are reluctant to switch to smoking because of being misinformed about the real truth and the evidence.
You know, I think it's more than a problem of just how do you guide somebody. I think the other problem is not as many people want to be guided anymore, right? Why is that? Because of the nonstop battering of vaping and the misinformation about vaping and the fear mongering about vaping and the constant barrage from mainstream media. You know, this is why most people think that vaping is worse than smoking at this point. This is why people think that nicotine causes cancer, right? There's been no
even doctors,
huh?
Even doctors.
Yeah. There has been no real good education.
And groups like sCOPe, those sorts of activities are terrific in reaching out to people, getting people to feel empowered to do things to protect their own health and to stand up to those who are trying to limit their choices, trying to use stigmatism, trying to use coercion, and to do the things that actually work to improve health. And individual involvement in that, people fighting for their rights, is incredibly important.
Hello and welcome to sCOPe. sCOPe is a consumer live stream event that was developed to inform, educate, and support the public, the media, and all the consumers of safer nicotine products in Asia Pacific and beyond. This is to show who we are, why we advocate for safer options for adults, and to show that we will not be silenced. This is our response to being excluded from the table as the main stakeholders of discussion and decision-making processes that directly impact our health and our right to make informed decisions.
There's a whole pile of misinformation that has to be corrected, just to create a level playing field where people can make for themselves a reasonable decision. And if you look at it reasonably, you have to say that the risk of vaping is definitely less than the risk of cigarette smoking, and that switching from smoking to vaping is going to be good for you.
Quitting smoking is very easy, as Asa has pointed out. I know, I've done it 7 times myself. The last time actually did it, and that was with for me, vaping. Others have used snus, others have used heat not burn. These are choices we've made, and these are things that have actually worked for us. And millions upon millions of other people. And we are not happy that billions of dollars has been spent demonizing the choices that we've made, the healthier, safer, better, smoke-free choices that we have made that have turned all of our lives around, that have brought us closer to our families, have improved our health, have helped us deal with life as we were dealing when we had cigarettes and nicotine. We still get the nicotine, we don't have the nicotine. We don't have the cigarettes, we don't have the tar, we don't have the smoke, we don't have the particulates, we don't have the chemicals, we don't have the carcinogens, we don't have the carbon monoxide.
Cigarette smoking is our leading cause of preventable death in Canada. And globally, it's over 8 million deaths per year because of cigarette smoking. By most estimates, it's the largest cause of preventable death on our planet.
I smoked for about 30 years. My mother died from smoking-related diseases at the age of 58. Since I have made the switch, I have had much better health outcomes. My breathing is better, my blood pressure is better, I can see and taste and smell things better.
I smoked for almost 40 years. Started when I was a teenager, and then I tried every which way to quit, but couldn't. I've been saying all the time that my health is much better. So I'm a living proof saying vaping is definitely healthier and safer than smoking.
Look, it's absolutely clear that switching to vaping will save lives. We have many high quality modelling studies now that confirm that. Look, I think advocacy is essential. Firstly, it does support vapers. It shows they're not alone, that there are other people sharing their beliefs. And it puts pressure on governments to make change.
One of the things that I think will help, not just in Thailand, but all over the world, is the grassroots activities. You know, we need to get together. We need to show our government, our respective government. One thing that I see that really help, like the events like sCOPe.
Well, I think if we look at grassroots activism on a wide range of topics, it's been hugely important because it's the people with that lived experience that can really communicate about why this is important and what they can do.
Particularly for sCOPe, you know, it's media that get us together, you know, because it's going to be quite difficult for advocates from all over the world to be in one place at one time. So what sCOPe does is bring us together. We can listen to opinions of experts all over the world. We can hear people and situations from all over the world. We can compare that from our country to the country, our next door countries and other countries, and say, hey, we have similar situations going on. How did they solve their problems? How we could do that to solve our problems. So sCOPe is a really, really great medium that bring us together. So hopefully, you know, that we'll just keep on doing it. And for me personally, I'll definitely be joining whenever the time comes.
The benefits of grassroots activism is that the people who are most directly impacted by punitive regulation and bans are the very people who are also the ones who have benefited from the use of these products to move away from combustible tobacco. Their skin in the game is merely their health and the health of their families and their loved ones.
My health has been much, much, much better. I have kids, I have granddaughters, one more is coming. You know, without vaping, I'll probably be dead, or definitely I wouldn't be enjoying this kind of life.
Hi, I'm back. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I think it's really important for us. Hold on. It's really important for us to have that out there, even though it's small. It will give people, the public, if we share it, to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. So we have to just keep going. And yeah, Asa is a very brave man, Ivana. I agree completely. Next up, we have a one-to-one discussion, and I'm going to bring in our expert for that. That is Henage. Hi, sir.
Expert.
How are you?
Yes, trust me. Listen to me. I'm an expert. Yes.
Well, you know what? You do have a very specific set of experiences that have helped all of us. I mean, from your work experience as a publisher and of course your experience as a consumer. So, I mean, I think it's good that we have you here and we can kind of pick your brain a little bit. What would you like to discuss? What do you would like to share with everyone? Not a nice pick in the brain, but what would you like to share with everyone, H?
Well, first of all, welcome everybody to sCOPE's live stream, and thank you very much for having me. It's an honor and a privilege to be the first guest this year. Yeah. So what would I like to discuss? Well, I have a mind full of stuff that I'd like to discuss, but picking one out at random, let's discuss the suitability of the FCTC to conduct any business whatsoever, given their abject failure to achieve anything of value, even up to selecting a country that's currently unable to host them and then cancelling it at the last minute, thereby causing all the delegates, none of whom are probably that particularly friendly towards tobacco harm reduction, but nonetheless all going there with the view to tackling tobacco endemic and the death and disease it causes. So let's give them the credit for at least being on the right side of that. So with the best will in the world, the FCTC has proven itself to be incapable of even hosting a conference for its own like-minded script readers. And these are the people who are going to be telling us and telling our governments what we should be doing with our lives and our choices and our health, and how governments should be regulating to continue to demonize us. That's on my mind.
Well, I agree with you in all of that. But there's another aspect of this, that the deviousness of the entire situation. Now it's my turn to rant a little bit. Okay. So what I found interesting was that the people that the COP10 consortium from the Ministry of Health in Panama, who were using $5 million to organize this conference, actually dropped out at the end of October. And yet the FCTC didn't bother to let any of the delegates know until the week before they were all planning on flying. Now, see, to me, that's a big issue, because I don't know how many people are aware of what goes on, but it takes months to get visas. It takes months to get budget allocations. It takes so much time to make the arrangements, hotels, flights, visas, everything. Okay. And at the last minute, telling them, oh, sorry, we're not going to do it, when they knew almost a month ahead of time that it wasn't going to happen. That shows me, not only does it show incompetence, but it also shows a complete disregard for the very people that they need to do what they're supposed to be doing. So what I don't understand, and what I'm wondering now, is how are the delegations going to react to that? Are they just going to take it laying down? Is anybody going to question where the $5 million went? What are they doing? How can this actually make them look good? How can they be considered professional doing something like that? That's my rant. What's your take on that?
Well, look, Nancy, look, I think, to be fair, I think there's never been an instance since the day the FCT was set up where they've been open and frank with evidence and facts. So the fact that they didn't tell their own delegates the fact that they were unable to push through with the conference until the very last minute, when, as you say, they knew a month ago, just is normal for the FCTC. That's how they operate. Facts, evidence, they have no place in the rhetoric that they espouse and the scripts that they're given. They're just none. So, but it does, as I said earlier, it clearly shows they are incapable of organizing their own conference, because they make all the wrong decisions every way down the line. The first wrong decision was, oh, let's put it in Panama, a country with over 90% illicit tobacco. Yeah, they're really serious about tobacco control. Sure they are. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they had it in India they had it in India a few years ago too. I mean, and they keep giving awards to governments of the countries that have, government interests in tobacco. So where's the line? Here's the question, H. Where is the line to determine, okay, these people, this is just not fit for purpose anymore. We got to burn the whole thing to the ground and start all over again. Where's the line?
I think we crossed that years ago, probably in Russia. Russia.
Of all places. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When, journalists were frog marched out and, batons and beatings and whatever. I mean, this is not a health conference when, I mean, look, if I was a patient going to a doctor, I wouldn't want him sharing my, my symptoms and my case with anyone else. However, I'm more than happy for him to learn from it and share the experience that he's gained from it, so that better treatments can be offered for future patients. And that is essentially what the FCTC ought to be doing in a medical context, is identifying issues and finding solutions that work, instead of denying solutions that have been put forward that do work. But just instead of being in denial, actually do the scientific process and say, does this work? Yes, no. Is it safer? Is it less safer? Yes, no. And it's pretty straightforward, and the work's already been done. We already know, despite all the denials, that it's far safer to vape, far safer to heat-not-burn, much safer to snus, much safer to nicotine pouch than to smoke. And yet we're being told repeatedly that it's just as dangerous to vape, smoke, HNB or snus or nicotine pouch by people who largely have never smoked and have no clue about the evidence and the science, because they're simply reading off a script that's given to them by their funders, which has nothing to do with public health. Public meaning it's about us, health meaning it's about health. And I'm not seeing either of those things there in the FCTC for years. I wish there was, because they really need to do the work that requires to be done, which is addressing the death and destruction that the tobacco pandemic continues to cause. 8 million deaths a year. That's the remit. Please focus on, use all the tools in the toolbox. Right? If you don't know how to use a screwdriver, learn.
Okay. I agree, of course. I think everybody agrees with you. Anyone who's a THR advocate would agree with you. Here's my question for you. The day that they postponed this COP, they issued a whole bunch of PR and a whole bunch of tweets, okay? Basically demonizing consumer advocates. And I shared them with Jan, who will be here later, I think. And she said, well, basically what the WHO is doing is, if you don't agree with us, well, then you're the you're the other guy, you're the tobacco company. How do you envision consumers dealing with that in the face of that? I mean, it's constant for all of us, but they actually publicly came out and possibly, maybe about, but the fact is it's out there and they keep pushing that narrative. How are we supposed to deal with that?
Okay. Perhaps there is a way to deal with that. Perhaps I wouldn't want to share it here, because why would I want to tip my hand? Honestly,
but in general, I mean, for the people.
In general, I would urge people to go and look at what they've written and replace the words big tobacco or any of the contentious words, and just replace it with FCTC. And it's a perfect fit. They are corrupting governments. They are corrupting public health. They are using underhand methods to denigrate anybody that stands in their way, including anybody that's pro-tobacco harm reduction, who all share the same goals. We all share the same goals. I can't stress this enough. We want to see tobacco ended, but we want to see it done right. We don't want to see people getting marginalized in society and treated as second-rate citizens. We don't want to see people taxed into oblivion. We don't want to see people's lives destroyed, businesses ruined. We want to see an end to tobacco pragmatically, reasonably, and rationally. We all, that's what we all want, an end to tobacco. The pragmatic, reasonable, and rational bit seems to be missing from the tobacco control side, because I've actually, in my head for some time now, I've already separated tobacco control from tobacco harm reduction. They ought to be together, but they're not. The tobacco control is about control. You can't do that. Money, taxes, money, control. You can't have that because we need the taxes from the tobacco. That's what I see. Whereas tobacco harm reduction is somewhat less, contentious, really.
Yeah. Someone asked in the chat earlier about, I think it was Rog. He was saying, he wasn't sure whether this postponement was a good thing or a bad thing. What do you think?
I think it's a great thing. I think it exposes the incompetence of the FCTC's managerial skills. It exposes the dissatisfaction amongst the delegates that, you guys are supposed to be, we're supposed to be like, having our act together. We clearly don't. I would hope that some delegates, because some are already questioning, will start questioning the rhetoric and start questioning the processes, the total lack of transparency, the total lack of democracy, the total lack of openness, the total lack of concern for the people they're supposed to be concerned about, which is you and me and all the other 1 billion plus tobacco and nicotine users around the world that they purport to be doing stuff for. They're not. They're doing it for money. They're doing it for their own satisfaction. I've stood behind delegates at airports debating which of their diplomatic passports they should get stamped because it's good for this hotel or that hotel. These guys are living the life. They're on the gravy train, and they're on the gravy train pouring the dregs onto the people that are feeding them, which is us. Because one way or another, they're supposed to represent us, whether they're a government delegation or whether they're an NGO. They're here to represent our interests, the interests of people that use these products. And they're not. They're not. So back to your fit for purpose. Years they haven't been fit for purpose. Could they be fit for purpose? Possibly, but probably not, because they're so entrenched in their way of doing things that look, we know that they want to start changing the goalposts, moving the goalposts. In science, they want to call steam smoke. They want to call vapor smoke. This will allow them to further manipulate the regulatory frameworks in the countries that appear to be kowtowing to them because they think that they are doing the right thing, so that they can increase their authority, if you will, over the segments that they currently do not have any legitimate authority over. They have no authority over vaping. None. Zero. None. Their remit is tobacco, cigarettes, not vaping. So now they're trying to change the rules so they don't have to basically shut themselves down and reinvent themselves. Because if they had to do that, I don't think they would come back in this form, because they've proven themselves to be highly contentious, not following the science, not at all concerned about the interests of the people they're supposed to be governed, and seriously corrupting governments around the world with their money and their lies. Sorry, ranting again. You're muted.
I'm muted. Ivana said it in chat. She's like, they don't control THR products, hence it's always been about control. They'll hand the whole thing over to big T as they can tax control them, et cetera, which of course, yes, makes sense, which is why vaping products and safer nicotine products are all being listed now as tobacco products, whether they contain tobacco or not. I mean, the shenanigans over in the United States over the coils and the FDA is just like absolutely insane. But getting back to the changing of science and changing of process and procedure, one of the things now, if everybody, I don't know if everybody's aware of this or not, they are going to have a mini de minimis meeting on Thursday and Friday of this week. Now, de minimis usually means process and policy. So I'm wondering if, this is what I'm wondering, I'll never get confirmation of it until obviously after it, but could it very well be that they're going to have that virtual meeting and set it up in such a way that they do deal with those issues, specifically, smoke is steam, changing consensus to majority rules, changing rules that are within the FCTC, because one of the things they've been saying is they've been postponing dealing with safer nicotine products because they need to meet in person. Could it be they're going to change the rules so that they can do everything virtually from now on? These are the things that I'm wondering what's going to happen on Thursday and Friday, because I find it very interesting that they postpone. When they first postponed it, they didn't even give a reason. Then the second reason was, because of what's going on on the ground with the protests over the mining. Then we find out from the Panamanian news agency about the money. And then now all of a sudden after that comes out, oh no, we have to have this virtual meeting. I mean, it boggles the mind really to think that, that these are the people that are responsible for health globally. And it's not just FCTCH, you know this. Okay, they've dropped the ball on so many other different things. I'm wondering when and how are people going to realize what's really going on? That's the thing that I wonder. Your take?
Well, first of all, we could speculate as much as we like about what they may or may not talk about their closed doors. We've been doing it for years. Everything they do is behind closed doors, and everything they do is to satisfy their puppet masters. Paymasters. Sorry, puppet masters. Sorry, paymasters. Yeah. So that's it. So whatever they're going to talk about, they're only going to tell us what they want us to know, and I wouldn't put it past them at all to try to change this. However, what I've seen of them is that they're so incompetent that they probably wouldn't be able to work that out. I would imagine, and sensibly, what this de minimis meeting should be about where are we going to hold this, how are we going to do this. With regards to changing the way that things are done, yeah, we know they're trying to do that. They're trying to change steam vapor into smoke, the definition of. Let's just change science around the world so we can continue to have our plush little jobs. Yeah, let's not do that. But that's how they operate. They want to change reality to suit their rhetoric. That's how they operate. They always have. So, yeah, like I say, we can speculate as much as we want about it. I wouldn't imagine that anything good is on the agenda with regards to tobacco harm reduction. And I doubt there's much good on the agenda in terms of appeasing the delegates of FCTC whose lives have been turned upside down and must be now questioning the validity of this organization that has screwed everybody for so long for the money that they get.
Yeah, I mean, fair call. Changing gears just a little bit. Asia Pacific, obviously, that's the region I'm in. That's the region you're in, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of change from the very, very beginning. Maybe give me an idea. I don't say a prognostication, but give me an idea of what you see happening going forward in the Asia Pacific region.
I think before we look at where we're going, we have to look at where we've been.
Exactly. So carry on.
So if you look at the way that it was just 10 years ago, it was basically grey everywhere. The tobacco harm reduction universe was just purely people selling stuff that people were using. Then Malaysia started getting into manufacturing. They built themselves up to a $500 million a year industry. Malaysian juice became very, very popular around in many markets. But then the departments of health, and I'm just going to say generic Department of Health, but really what I mean by Department of Health in every single instance is the cadre of FCTC clones that occupy the smoking tobacco control department of every single department of health, pretty much, in the region. So when they started to get their oar in there, that's when everything started to go pear-shaped. So what happened in Malaysia, in the Philippines, to a certain extent in India, in Indonesia to some extent, in Australia, well, in New Zealand, is that consumer groups started organizing themselves. People who were like really upset with the fact that, hey, this has changed my life. This has led me away from deadly cigarettes to something far less harmful, but gives me the nicotine that I need or crave, whatever it is. And yet my government is trying to shut it down. So brave people such as Asar in Thailand stood up to, in many cases, quite repressive governments at some risk to themselves, and started telling the truth, started telling their own stories, started getting other vapors together. And before we knew it, we had effective functioning consumer groups in India, in Malaysia, in Thailand, in New Zealand, in the Philippines, somewhat in Indonesia. And these groups have organized themselves and cooperated with each other through CAFRA in this particular case, sharing experiences, sharing challenges, sharing successes, and as a consequence have been able to leverage a seat at the table in many cases, and that seat at the table has resulted in legislation legalizing and bringing vaping out of the grey and into the public domain, now tax earner regulations to follow. This is a success story, and this is a success story that can and must be replicated around the region. I think we'll see it soon in Thailand. We've seen it in New Zealand. We will see it in Malaysia. But there's a whole bunch of challenges that remain. So if we just zero in on the Philippines, for example, yes, now vaping is legal, and the process of applying the regulations is now happening. And the devil is in the details, because you could make something legal, like in Australia, it's not illegal to vape, so long as you've got a prescription and can find one of the 2% of doctors in the country that will actually honor that prescription, then you're limited to what you get. So what's the solution? You go online and you order the stuff and you smuggle it and you bring it in, and that's where all the vaping is being done. So the criminalization of people, of smokers, of nicotine users, is part of the playbook of the tobacco control, anti-tobacco harm reduction squad. But at the end of the day, consumers are the people that pay the taxes, vote for the politicians, and make the choices. And if we hadn't chosen to use these products to benefit our health and prolong our lives, sorry, that might be inconvenient for some people, but that's why we did it, and it's worked. Why shouldn't we share this, and why shouldn't regulators and legislators understand from our own mouths, from our own lived experience, together with the science, together with the evidence, that this is a real game changer, a real positive step forward for tobacco control, if you will. How do we get to do that? We keep doing what we're doing. We keep doing this. We keep telling our stories. We keep sharing the evidence. We keep putting the science in front of anybody that we can. And we keep writing to our MPs, and we keep having conferences, and we keep going online, and we keep telling our friends, and we keep telling anybody in the media that we can. And we keep sharing Twitter feeds, and we keep sharing Facebook feeds, and we keep ramping it up. Because while we may be just 1 billion people, that's like quite a significant percentage of the population whose concerns need to be addressed, because we're all at risk. And we're all at risk from the choices that most of us made when we were children, and we're stuck with the consequences of those choices now in our adulthood, and we're being punished for those choices financially, socially. This isn't the way to address this problem. We need help. We don't need punishment. And actually, we don't. It's become quite clear to a growing number of users of vapes and less harmful tobacco, nicotine products in many jurisdictions, that you can't rely on the government to make those choices for you. They've got it wrong. So you make those choices yourself. Hence the black market. Hence the fact that pretty much every vape in Australia is sourced illegally. No taxes earned, no checks and balances on the manufacturer, no regulatory oversight, none. And this is the wrong way to do it. They've been told this repeatedly, but they're not listening. Countries that are listening include the UK. I'm sure we'll come up with some other countries soon. New Zealand, to a certain extent, the Philippines. There are many others, in fact. The countries that are not listening, they need to be continuously told. But one thing I think is very important, that we're not looking for a fight. We're not looking for an argument. We agree that tobacco needs to be phased out. It's how you do it and the tools you use and that are available to get it done that is the issue here. We don't disagree with much of what conventional tobacco control would say. We have some issues with high taxation because it does not help lower income and marginalized smokers to quit at all. It just bankrupts them. We don't agree with lumping vaping and smoking together. They're completely different. But yeah, we're pragmatic. We'll make compromises in order to make sure that any adult smoker that's out there gets access to his choice of these products so that they can do the right thing by their own health and their own families. And that's what we have to keep doing, is to just keep putting that truth out there. These things save lives, and anybody that says they don't is in denial and is not telling the truth.
Well, let's kind of break that down a bit, okay? And I'm going to bring up Australia, which what a clusterfuck. Anyway, Australia has the medicalized model, okay? And I'm going to be talking to Carolyn Beaumont on Friday about this because she's a prescriber in Australia. One of the things that the stats have shown is that since they've gone with the medical model, there are more vapes out there. There are more youth over there using vapes because, like you said, it's a black market, so it's unregulated. But even though they already have a medicalized model, they're still coming in with even more laws to ban something that's already been banned. So obviously they're on a trajectory that they're just not going to listen. Okay. And I mean, this is one of those things I'd like to talk to Mike about because he lives amidst it. Right. And some countries are looking at Australia saying, wow, that's the way to do it. That's it. That's a ticket. And completely disregarding those other collateral damages and problems that are happening. I mean, we look at Thailand. Okay. For example, Thailand, it's all black market. Okay, even though the rules are a little interesting because you're allowed to have it on you, but you're not allowed to use it in public, and you're not allowed to manufacture it, and you're not allowed to sell it. And now in India, now they're trying to push through that, it used to be the same way in India, but now in India, they're trying to make possession illegal. Okay, it makes me wonder, a lot of times people will come up to me and say, how come you guys are able to do the things that you do? And I just, we just do what we're doing. Every region has a different context. So what would you say to people who are in that kind of situation where, like, for example, Canada or the United States, where they're seeing where they had an open market and it's just doing this? What would you say to them would be the best way to approach dealing with that, aside from obviously testimonials and contacting MPs? What do you think they should be doing?
What do I think? Who should be doing the regulators or the consumers?
The consumers.
Okay. Well, when you've got a problem, the problem is the consumers aren't being listened to. You kind of have to go and look at all the sides of the problem. Something the FCCT does not do. But that's what you're supposed to do. So let's look at what is the fundamental basis for the prohibitionist stance. And in my opinion, it's a handful. I mean, we're talking a handful of highly paid experts whose careers are totally based on maintaining a noise. So they found their little niche, which is let's ban vaping, let's make vapors' lives miserable, and they're getting money for it. So there's no incentive whatsoever for them to stop doing it. They've got the ears of the people they need to talk to. They've got the credibility that they require in order to get their message across. They've got the message that's been scripted for them by their funders, and they're going to continue doing that. And there's also the human element. They don't want to back down because they'd have to admit they were wrong. And unlike most scientists who can do that, most politicians can't. So these people have made their nest and they're in there and they got their eggs in there and they get fed very well as long as they stay in that nest and make those chirping sounds that they're required to make. So identifying who those people are, we know who they are in every country, don't we?
Yes, we do.
So identifying who those people are and then identifying their funding sources and then exposing them as the hypocrites that they are means that their influence inevitably must wane. So while remaining on the correct side of the law, I think it's quite functional to have Freedom of Information Act. Okay, this guy that's giving you this advice, where's he get his funding from? This guy that's giving you that advice, whose company is supporting him? I think this is reasonable to ask. And you know, I firmly believe in playing when you're in a contest, you have to look at who you're competing against and look at their strengths and their weaknesses. And you have to play to their strengths and you have to use their weaknesses against them. And when I look at what the SCTC, for example, has been publishing for the last couple of days, attacks on any advocate as being tobacco company shills, I look at that and I go, you know what, these guys, they're terrified. They get it. They get it. They're just a small group of people worldwide who are making this noise, and they know how vulnerable they are because they're telling lies. Now, some of them actually may believe what they're saying, but it's so actually not difficult to prove it to a reasonable person. What they're saying is not true, right? Or, you know, they may believe it to be true, but it's an opinion because the evidence does not back them up. There's no factual content to what they're saying, just one or two largely debunked bits of scientific research by people who are basically paid or had their own agenda to do it, therefore not science, but marketing. You know, if you can get them sitting around in a room where they're not shouting you down, which is what they do if you ever get them into a room, because they can't talk to us, these people that are controlling the tobacco control agenda, the anti-vaping agenda. They can't talk to us because they have nothing of value to say, because they have no evidence to back up what they say, except stuff that they know in their heart of hearts to be fake. So they've been sitting on lies for so long that they can't back off. They are the people that are vulnerable to legitimate, truthful, factual debate and exposure. So I would imagine one way of going about it.
That's one way of going about it. I mean, the other thing, and I said this the other day when that whole GGTC thing and the FCTC tobacco exposed, all that bullshit came out, is I said, you know, reading it and looking at it, and it to me, it's and this is going to sound weird, but it smells of desperation. They know they don't have the evidence they need to proceed with this agenda of theirs. So what they're trying to do is attack everything and anything, like Jan said, that goes against them, because how, you know, and it's a good thing that they're doing that. And this is going to sound weird, but it's a good thing that they're doing that because it means they see what we're doing. They see us as a threat. They see the truth as threat. you know,
And
and that it was fun. I'm going to read a comment that Rog wrote on here. He goes, I think that many think they can just shut down e-cigarettes. I liken the fact that they thought alcohol prohibition was bad. Just wait, as alcohol prohibition involved tens to hundreds of thousands, whereas e-cigarette users are in the millions. That's true, Rog. That's true. You know, but then the other thing that came up in the chat was, well, Big Pharma's up against it because Big Pharma's losing money on NRT. Is that true or false? What is your take on that?
Well, of course it's true. Remember, it was Big Pharma who funded FCTC in the first place. It was Big Pharma who ensured that Big Tobacco was excluded from many discussions, even though they are the problem. They made sure of that in the original FCTC mandate. That was written by Big Pharma, funded by Big Pharma. The first two FCTC COPs were funded exclusively by Big Pharma. Bloomberg came in 2012. They were funded by Big Pharma right up until then. Why did they want to exclude tobacco from Big Tobacco or anything to do with tobacco from that? It was nothing to do with the Article 5 point, whatever the reasons in there. No. It was to do with, we've got patches, sprays, gums, and nicotine therapy, which doesn't work, but never mind, we're making shitloads of money out of it. We don't need the competition from vaping. Now, vaping wasn't around when the FCTC was created, but tobacco companies were investing in alternative nicotine products quite heavily at the time, and there were one or two products. So they recognized Big Tobacco as being someone they needed to exclude, and their justifications were commercial and political and had nothing to do with public health and finding a solution to smoking. Nothing. So Big Pharma is now in the position where everybody that's vaping is not using a patch or a spray or a gum. They don't need to, and they never will need to. Anybody that's using snus does not need a patch or a spray or a gum. They don't need to, and they never will need to. Plus which, of course, given that the nicotine replacement therapies by Big Pharma are largely ineffective and not well accepted by smokers because they really don't mimic smoking, the probability, but the evidence shows that most people revert back to smoking within 3 years, most within 6 months. So they don't really work. Consequently, there's their next lot of revenue when the smokers start needing treatment for the smoking-related diseases that they will inevitably get later on in life. So if you want to be really cynical about it, you could say that, yeah, there's absolutely no interest from Big Pharma to see an end to tobacco smoking because it provides them with a significant amount of revenue, both through the life of the smoker as he tries to quit using these pharmaceutical devices which kind of don't work, and then gets sick from the tobacco after he's had to revert back to smoking because their products don't work, and use their other products to mitigate the illnesses that tobacco smoking has given.
Or as Ivana just said, Big P makes money off of sick smokers. Yeah, they don't create cures, they create clients, right?
Exactly. So yes, Big Pharma is very much the demon here. I mean, people have accused me of accepting money from tobacco companies, and my response is often, look, yes, it's true. I have taken money from tobacco companies. I would take money from the devil himself if it would help us to stop tobacco smoking. I would even consider taking money from pharma.
Well, you know, this is the thing that I found interesting in that last batch of bullshit that came out about us, you know, and that they were saying, you know, that they work with or they collaborate or they take money. And, you know, I have always been very open about this, that, you know, I will talk to anyone, I will collaborate with anyone, because for me, the end goal is getting people off of the thing that's going to kill them in the end. And, you know, I find it really hypocritical, right? That, you know, I can get lambasted for that. And yet they can turn around and accept it from money from Big Pharma, and that's okay. You know, because according to them, and with this whole drama over 5.3, which of course, you know, as multiple people who used to work in the WHO have said, it's a complete misinterpretation of Article 5.3. Article 5.3 was put in there to protect governments from being coerced by tobacco interests. It has nothing to do with consumers. And now they've turned around and you decided to use that against us as consumers, which is, just.
But it's not just consumers. They use it against scientists, researchers, anybody who's got anything positive to say about tobacco harm reduction is obviously in the pay of big tobacco. So we don't have to just. That's
exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. And I mean, it's just. It boggles the mind to me. I mean, it really does, especially when it's coming from countries that do have tobacco interests. I mean, how much of a hypocrite can you really be? China, India. I mean, hello. You know what I'm saying? It was just, as Ivana just said, heads in the sand. We're coming up towards the CAFRE discussion in a few. So carry on.
I just want to say further to my last point of, we need identify who the people who are making the noise are and expose them and marginalize them. One, two, anybody that's got any access to the media, I'm happy to do media training for anybody that wants it. But I think many of us in the advocacy sphere understand the media to a certain extent and have some access. One of the things that I'm constantly reminding people is when you're writing something or when you're presenting something to the media or that the media might get hold of, it's very helpful to understand what side of the political divide the media that you're talking to is on, and to couch your message in a way that will resonate with the general readership of that paper or the general listeners or viewers of that TV station. Because if you look at Fox, if you look at MSNBC, the way that you would present a tobacco harm reduction case to Fox would be different to the way that you would present it to MSNBC. So trying to tailor your message to the market, to the demographic that you're aiming for, which often means writing more than one press release or making more than one interview, it's going to be functional because it helps you to bring in people who are not necessarily got skin in the game in the tobacco harm reduction or tobacco control game, but people who care about human rights, people who care about the integrity of their government, people who care about choices, people who care about the health of people that smoke or whatever, even if they don't smoke or vape, because this is a political issue. And remember, what we're seeing at the FCTC and the WHO, the complete lack of transparency, lack of engagement with facts and evidence. That's what we're seeing in governments around the world, in Russia, in Iran. I don't want to name too many, but you know where I'm going with this. The whole political thing is the world is so crystallized and divided into different groups. And politically speaking, when you look at governments around the world, they're in a mess. I mean, the elections are, contentious everywhere. They didn't used to be like this. But you've got dictators coming up and wannabe dictators all over the place. And that mindset filters down into the WHO, into the United Nations, into the FCTC, because the mindset of politicians is defensive and contentious, because it's dog eat dog out there in the political arena, isn't it? And that's coming down to us. So we have that. Okay. A lot of people do have zero engagement because they don't want to talk to us for any number of reasons. That said, if you make the headline right, I know I'm just sounding like it's so easy. It's not. I know. But headlines and numbers are what sell articles to media. Come up with an outrageous headline and throw some numbers in there, and you got a chance.
That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. You do know that.
Yeah, but that's what it is. I mean, in Asia, you just pay the media if you got the money. Let's be honest. That's what Bloomberg does. That's what FCTC does with Bloomberg's money. That's what the University of Bath does. That's what the tobacco control lobby does. They pay media around the world to carry their lies. We can't do that.
And as an aside to that, I remember a discussion I had with someone in the States telling me that at least in the States or North America for the most part, it's very difficult to put something counter or to say anything, and be very explicit about what's going on, because you've got to worry about the threat of a lawsuit.
Exactly.
So not only are they using the media, they're also using litigation.
Exactly.
And people who have a lot of money can stay in litigation for years. And first of all, you have to have the money to even fight it, and nobody has the money to fight it.
Nobody has that. Yeah. Because
hey,
newsflash, we're not funded. Hello. Yeah.
I know. Did you see the GS?
The advocates around the world, we actually don't have the money.
I know.
We wish we did, because we need it, because we're fighting a multi-billion-dollar lobby, and we're doing it grassroots, and that's how we do it, and that's all we can do. So yeah, look, whenever it gets depressing, whenever it gets hard, and it does, we have our groups, and we can revert to our groups and recharge and replenish, and that's how we do it. For the guys on the other side of the fence, their replenishment comes in the form of money, and lots of it.
Yeah.
We have passion, we have truth, evidence, and right on our side. We'll just keep going. We ain't going anywhere. Sorry.
I mean, that's all we can do.
I always say, grassroots, you can cut the grass down, but it will grow back, and it will grow back stronger.
Yep, it will, for sure. Yeah. Any parting thoughts for everybody while we wait for the CAFR people to arrive?
I would just say, first of all, what we're doing here at sCOPe is just a very small part of what is being done around the world. Not just today, not just this week, but every day. There are dedicated, passionate advocates out there who are spending countless hours burning the midnight oil, trying to get this across the post. We need to get our regulators to understand that these things are not the enemy. snus is not the enemy. We are not the enemy. We're kind of on your side. We should all be on the same side. We should be working together to end the curse of tobacco smoking on the planet. But we need to do that with compassion. We need to meet people where they are, and we need to understand that we have to help people, not hurt them, on the path towards a smoke-free planet.
Yeah, no, fair call. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Are you ready for me to bring everybody in from CAFR that we have so far? There's going to be a couple of stragglers.
Oh,
no! We're going to have stragglers as usual. I'll bring the person who is right on time. I mean, actually early. We have two people that are actually early. Three people that are actually early. So I'm going to bring them in. How's that? First, I'm going to bring in Jan. Hi, Jan.
Hi, Jan.
Hi. I'm going to bring in Clarice. Hi, Clarice.
Hey.
Hi, Clarice.
And you know who else I'm going to bring in? Because I want to ask him a question. He's probably going to hate me for doing this, but I'm going to bring Mike in. Mike, you're on. Mike, you're on. Unmute. Unmute, Mike.
You are
now, everybody, I just put you in there. We can hardly see you, Captain. You're okay.
I've just been practicing on the piano.
Yeah. There. Okay. Yeah. You might want to light a fire in that fireplace. It's pretty cold over here. I don't know about over there. So, Mike, I want to ask you something. I'm going to start with Mike. You've heard what H and I were talking about, and you saw that I heard that I brought up Australia. You're on the ground in Australia. You're not a vapor. You're not a smoker. Okay. Give us your take on what's going on in Australia and what you're seeing.
I don't see anyone smoking any longer. I see people vaping anything from the age of 12, 13 to, my age. But I do know that it's readily accessible. Kids at school are getting it from any corner shop. Everyone's doing it under the counter. Any petrol station, particularly run by our Indian brethren out here, you just can get you can get vapes anywhere. But the thing is, all I see is people vaping. Not every. If I see 20 people in one day, I might see one, or 50 people in one day, I might see one. But I don't see anyone smoking.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's a good thing in one way.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
actually a really good thing.
But they're not doing anything to curb the under-counter sales. That's clearly not happening. No one's doing anything. You can go anywhere, and all the kids know exactly where to go to get it. So, networking, Facebook, Instagram, you name it, everyone knows where to go. So that's what you see out here. I mean, vapes. You don't see tobacco smoking. Rare.
Okay.
It's very rare to see someone smoking a cigarette.
So that's actually a good thing, really. H, you got a take on that?
Well, in Thailand, it's kind of the same, except that you can't even get it on prescription legally. We can't. So, but you don't see so many people smoking here. You see people vaping everywhere, inside shopping malls, in restaurants.
No, they're still hiding it here. You know, people will sort of turn away. They'll go around a corner or whatever. It's not an obvious thing. It's not an overt thing. You know, they're doing it like, oh, shit, I'm in trouble. But everyone looks the same. Guilty.
Well, because you've got dobbin lines, don't you, in Melbourne and places.
Yeah, I believe
my
so.
neighbour's vaping. I can smell it. Yeah, it's poisoning my children.
Shit.
Yeah, like that. Well, the Golem.
There is that.
The Golem voice is good, H, by the way.
Yeah, well, you look like Captain Morgan. Like you need a peg leg and a bottle of rum.
Was that Captain Morgan? Well, sorry. I thought it was Lord of the Rings. Anyway.
You could be eating Lord of the Rings. You're I want to ask Jan something. Oh my God, guys, welcome to a CAFRA meeting. This is what happens. Jan, you're in Wellington. I see a lot of people vaping up here in Palmy. What's the situation down in Wellington?
Okay, there's not many people smoking. You see more vapors than smokers. But interestingly, I was out shopping with my daughter just last weekend, and we sort of like stopped for a rest, and we're at this outside having a drink, and there were some people smoking, and they started going on quite loudly about how bad vaping was.
Oh.
Okay. Asthma and Respiratory Foundation got to them.
Yeah,
Okay.
evidently, your lungs fill with water, and then a whole lot of stuff grows in there, and it's dreadful. And
Mike informed us from Australian TV that we're vaping. I think it was, what was it, Mike? Antifreeze, and we're all going to die.
Something like that. So I don't know how you guys are still kicking. Still looking really good. Love the hairdo.
Well, we never
love the beard. Clarice.
Compulsory when you hit 65.
Clarice, what are you seeing in the Philippines?
Hey everyone. I apologize in advance if I sound so nasal because it's flu season here and I unfortunately caught it yesterday. Anyway, as far as what I have been seeing here right now, I've observed that I see a lot more vapors than smokers. And some people I know personally that used to smoke have now also shifted to vaping mainly because of convenience. That's what they told me. But as far as the stores or the shops are concerned, I've been seeing some shops close down for a few days. Probably it's because of the compliance with certain permits and stuff like that. So we still are in the sort of interim period for these shops to comply with the vape law that we now have right here.
All right, so you're seeing an improvement too. So everywhere, what we're seeing is people are actually making the switch, whether it's legal or not.
Exactly.
And it's filtering through. Now, are you guys all cool with me bringing Paul Blamere in, because he's sitting there in studio and he'd like to come in? Are we all good with that? All right, we're going to have another Aussie in. Here he comes. Hi, Paul.
G'day, mate.
Hey, Paul.
Hello, everyone. Hey, everyone. How are you?
We're all good. How are you?
Hey, Paul.
Oh, working away. I'm good.
Yeah. And we've got a comment. I just popped up. Ivana in Canada is seeing a lot more people smoking now than she did 4 years ago. No doubt that probably has something to do with what's going on over there. Paul.
Well, when you tell people vaping is just as harmful as smoking, what's the point of switching?
True. There is that. There is that. Paul, I'm going to ask you the same question. Do you see the same things that Mike's seeing?
I'm seeing two things here, especially here where I'm living at the moment in the outer suburbs of Sydney. I'm seeing probably a paradigm shift between cigarette smoking and vaping, but the black market here now for tobacco is just completely out of control. Completely out of control. The cigarette prices here in Australia for an average packet, $42 in comparison to Chop Chop for $20 for what, 50 grams? And if you're lucky, if you can find someone on the other side, and Mike was correct, it's not the Australian community that's actually doing it. It's a lot of the people and even Uber drivers that are delivering both disposables and tobacco to people. It's very, very different. But we're seeing kids here walking through shopping centres vaping, which I'll tap some of them on the shoulder and I say, "Come on, man, you're part of the problem here. We've been trying to get this legalised, and you're just here screwing it up." And they just look at me and go, "Yeah, you're just some old man that doesn't really want to understand it." It's hard to put into perspective, but Australia now, with the laws that are being brought down, it's not looking pretty at all.
It's interesting. You brought up Chop Chop. I've moved, right? So I'm not in Auckland anymore. I'm now out in the boondocks, as Jan knows. And interestingly enough, one of the things I've noticed down here is I do see more. I see vapors, but the vapors tend to be more like the migrants, the immigrants are vaping, which I thought was rather interesting, as opposed to your standard everyday New Zealander. And I haven't seen kids really that much. So I want to ask Jan. We'll switch to Jan. Jan, how many kids do you see in vaping in Wellington?
None. I'm sure they're there, but I haven't seen them.
Okay, because I know that Mark had said to me that it's a really big problem up in Rotorua, in impoverished, lower socioeconomic neighborhoods. You see these, like Mike was saying, or Paul was saying, 12-year-olds are vaping, but I haven't seen any here. And I'm kind of sitting here wondering, they keep talking about the vaping epidemic in New Zealand. I'm like, where? Which brings me to Clarice again. I'm going to try not to ask you too many questions, Clarice, because I know your voice is shot. How many kids are you seeing smoking? Because there used to be a lot of kids that smoked in the Philippines. How many kids are you seeing smoking?
Kids who are smoking, I still see like a big bunch of them. But kids or minors who are vaping, I don't think I've seen any minor holding a vape ever, actually. I don't think I've seen a minor vape ever. Although I've seen younger population from the younger bracket, probably around 20 or 21, but that's probably the youngest that I've seen, and they're not minors anymore. I mean, the age of majority in the Philippines is 18, so but for minors, for smoking, there's definitely still a lot of them, but for vaping, I don't think so.
Okay, H, how many kids?
I think just one point in the Philippines. The Philippines is a country where you can still buy one stick.
Yeah. So we're not really,
from an economic
required
point
to
of
buy
view,
the whole
you know,
packet.
yeah, you can just buy
Yeah.
one stick.
It's called
So-
tingi. In the Philippines, it's called tingi. You can buy tingi, which means you can buy one stick, two sticks, and that's it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sellers here of, sari sari store sellers, they don't really care if you're a child buying a cigarette stick. It's common actually for children to be buying cigarette sticks by the tingi.
I mean, that was common back when my kids were in high school. People were selling, one cigarette here, one cigarette there. So that was, I don't know if it happens now because I don't have a kid in school anymore. But H, how many kids do you see vaping in Thailand?
Quite a lot.
Okay.
You don't see it so much, but I do because I've got kids. So, and pretty much every single one of my kids' friends either vapes or has vaped. Many of them vaped and then stopped. So it was a fad, and they don't do it anymore. I have 3 sons. One still vapes, the other 2 don't. But they the one that vapes, he's an idiot, and he started smoking before he started vaping. Now he stopped smoking and vapes. The other one started vaping, said yeah, ha ha ha, and then nah, don't do it anymore. So as a little macrocosm of the vaping epidemic among youth, it's quite telling. Yes, all 3 of my kids have vaped. 2 of them no longer vape because they never smoked. The one that smoked still vapes.
The one that
they're
all
older than 18 also. So
they're all older. The one thing I find interesting about this entire thread of conversation, in the countries where it's quote unquote banned, you see more problems than in the countries where it's regulated.
It's absolutely rife here. I mean, you walk down the main tourist street here, and it's just full of stalls on the street selling vapes and sex toys, both of which are illegal here.
But weed's legal.
Weed is legal, yes. I think there's a convoluted logic behind the banning of sex toys because it would detract from the sex industry, perhaps. I don't know. I don't need to hire a girl tonight because I've got this. I don't know, but
the boy critics complain. Oh my God. So it's almost like they're creating a problem to maintain irrelevance. And it doesn't, again, we're back to what you and I were just talking about it doesn't have to be real, it just has to be put out there and people believe it.
Just put out there so I can keep my son keep talking and people keep listening that I need to keep listening and I'll keep getting paid. And my career will be thing. I think what these people are all missing, this handful of people that are, is that history isn't going to judge them well. Maybe they don't care, but history will not judge them well.
I don't think they care.
Look, I mean, SCTC has just postponed itself. Okay, we've talked about the incompetence, but look at this. 8 million, since the last FCTC conference, 16 million people have died from smoking, the problem they're supposed to be addressing. They can't even organize a conference to get to grips with that problem. Not that they have any capacity to get the grips with it, even if they were in a conference, but This to me, it's unbelievable that these people who are supposed to be taking care of this problem just continue to blather about and we'll just postpone that. Yeah, if you'd have put it in the right place in the first place, you wouldn't have had to postpone it. If you were dealing with credible, institutions in the first place, you wouldn't have to postpone it. But you don't have that capacity. Meanwhile, every 10 seconds, a Filipino is dying from smoking-related diseases.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Every second, someone's dying on the planet from smoking-related, and yet these guys and their little junkets, we'll just postpone that, maybe change the rules, and come back and see us next year. Yeah, tell that to the families of the people who lost. Tell that to the families of people who are going to lose people from smoking-related diseases because they didn't have the opportunity to switch when they could have done had the science and the logic and the reason and the rights of people been taken into consideration.
But you've got to remember,
and big farmers' money.
But H, you've got to remember, according to them, if they don't do it their way, they're getting what they deserve.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I keep forgetting we're all the idiots here and they're the guys that know everything, and we just have to shut up and do what we're told because we know nothing. Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
No.
I'm going to segue
Sorry.
over to Jan for a minute. Jan, all the crap that came out in the WHO blasting all of us and all the horrible things they were saying about us. What's your take on it?
Well, it's kind of like they have decided now that if you speak up against the COPE or the WHO, that means you're the tobacco industry.
Yeah. How does that make you feel?
Oh, it's just bizarre. It's just totally bizarre. It's no longer like if your great-great-great-grandfather's second cousin's husband was, employed like picking tobacco leaves. Now if you dare to aim any criticism in their direction, now you are obviously employed by the tobacco industry. Oh, well, I'm still waiting for my Ferrari.
I want a house. I mean, this renting shit's old. I want a house. I think Mike wants a house too. Mike and I will take a house. Okay.
Can I just chime in very, very quickly? One of the things that I noticed from the WHO's exposure of the tobacco influence on getting lobbying, blah, 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 is they very kindly listed a whole bunch of very truthful and accurate press releases that have come from various funds, none of whom are funded by tobacco, none, right? And many of whom are absolutely clear they will not accept even a cup of coffee from anybody that picked a tobacco leaf in 5 generations. They just won't take it. And yet these people are being slammed. And yet what they've written and the links that they put to those articles, have you read the articles that you're putting out there? Because you should. And thank you very much for sharing them. Everybody should read those articles because they're telling the truth. Unlike you, this is truth.
Okay,
this is evidence.
Hey, I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna share my screen and show you that page. All right. Hopefully I do this right and not completely fuck it up, but anything is possible. Okay. Here we go. Can everybody see that?
We can see little wheels spinning. Oh, there you go.
Okay. I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to slowly scroll. There are 65 articles on here.
Oh, yeah.
And named and shamed the authors. Yeah.
Look, we made it. We made it 14 times out of the 65, by the way, I'll have you know.
Yeah. So,
Okay,
I would urge everybody to go to that website, read those articles, and then see really who's actually on the right side of things here. Let me give you a clue. It's not the FCTC.
I'm just going to scroll through slowly, and then I'll share the link. People like David Sweener. I mean, Ace is on here, for God's sake.
I actually find this list quite funny, to tell you the truth, because
delay. I mean,
look, Mom, I made it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's kind of what it is. I mean, even Kyosi Ladape. I mean, he's what the hell?
What?
There am I.
Yeah, right there. Kyosi Ladape is on there.
Wow.
I mean, okay. And then this one, Big Tobacco. I mean, what the hell is that?
Who wrote that?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Cigarette electronic recherche. I mean, it's who FCTC report. Vaping remains an enemy to be defeated, right? Okay. And then there's another CAFR because we're just walking here. Okay.
Yeah, but
Mark
actually,
Oates,
Nancy, you've made the top 10. I love it.
Hold on, I'm going to keep going. It's a long one. Garrett McGovern. You see Garrett McGovern? Garrett is an actual GP and works for the HSC in Ireland. All right, let's see. Let's keep going.
No, he's not. He's a director of Philip Morris. Everybody knows that.
Oh, my God. I mean, Alex is on here.
Jerry, and then
Jerry. Me a couple hundred times.
This is hilarious.
Rights for vapers in Canada, ARDT, Iberoamerica. I mean, this whole thing, hold on, I'm going to copy this. This whole thing is just absolutely, it's retarded. I mean, that's politically incorrect thing to say, but
It's not a good thing to say, but it's
It's
a
nice to
word
know
that
that
needs
when
to.
they Google my name, that'll appear.
Yeah. Fair call, Clarice. Fair call.
I mean, okay, Mark is saying hand pink waving. I don't know what the hell that means. Does anybody know what that means? Mark, what the hell does that mean? He's not going to answer me. Anyway, but I mean, this is the kind of shit that they're coming up with.
There was another WHO page that went up that we found rather amusing. Do you want to find that one, Nancy? The one that we just copied and pasted it and changed all our names to their names. It works.
Oh, you want me to share that?
Yeah, let's have a look at that because that's
All
funny.
right, hold on. Let me see if I can find it.
What?
Let me see.
Okay. A little background here. The FCTC has come up with, or is it the FCTC or whoever it is, has come up with this campaign to expose big tobacco interference in tobacco control. And they list all these things that we apparently are doing, right?
Really?
But they're all exactly what they're doing. Exactly what they're doing. So we'll show you the website where we find it, and then we'll show you the response.
I'm going to share it. I'm going to share it. Just hold on.
Oh, this has to be. Oh,
all right, here we go. Key
you've got to be
facts.
kidding me.
Can you guys see this?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's not many. Why don't we just read it out? Here, I'll open up my.
The tobacco industry's ongoing tactics to win influence and interfere with health policies include claiming a public health role while killing over 8 million people a year, saying they are sustainable while their products pollute our planet, funding scientists or third parties to produce biased research, financing front groups to lobby against tobacco control policies, paying for social media influencers and event sponsorships, hiring legal teams to litigate, challenge, and delay tobacco regulations, financially supporting activist groups to rally against tobacco policies. Whose campaign objectives are to, 1, counter the tobacco industry's infodemic and show policymakers how the industry continues to target children and youth, 2, protect future generations by asking governments to safeguard health policy making from tobacco industry interference, 3, spread awareness about the various tactics the tobacco industry uses to influence public opinions and policy, and 4, amplify calls from youth to protect them from the tobacco industry.
It's all fine and dandy, eh? So we've come up with another thing. There's a bit at the front. I'll just read it very quickly. The key facts, right? So if you keep that up on the screen there, Nance.
I brought it down. All right, hold on. I'll bring it back up again. Hold on. I'll bring it back up. Okay, there you go.
Okay, key facts. WHO FCTC's ongoing tactics to win influence and interfere with health policies include claiming a public health role while being complicit in the deaths of over 8 million people every year, saying they are democratic while their policies corrupt our planet, funding scientists or third parties to produce biased research, financing front groups to lobby against tobacco harm reduction policies, paying for social media influencers and event sponsorships, hiring legal teams to litigate, challenge, and delay tobacco harm reduction regulations, financially supporting activist groups to rally against tobacco harm reduction policies. CAFRA's campaign objectives are to counter the WHO's infodemic and show policymakers how the FCTC continues to use children and youth to distract from its flawed positions on tobacco harm reduction, protect future generations by asking governments to safeguard health policy making from corrupt and flawed interference, spread awareness about the various tactics the WHO FCTC uses to influence public opinions and policy, and amplify calls from adult nicotine users to protect them from the WHO's FCTC's corrupt and misleading scaremongering. So pretty much all their own words used against them. And that, to my point earlier, is that's what we need to do. Use their own words against them. Yeah. That's
Yeah. I mean, it just, but again, as I said before, the more they attack, the more that means, like, you and I have had this discussion, H. The more they attack, the more that means they're aware we're there, and the more scared they are.
Oh yeah, they know we're telling the truth. They know that we've got evidence and right on our side, and yeah, they're scared. And yes, they are listening. Yes, they
I
are
want to
watching.
ask.
Hello, everybody, wave to the FCTC spooks. Hello, hello. Hi, yeah.
Greetings from downtown Palmerston North.
Yeah.
I want to ask Mike, because again, Mike is not a smoker nor a vapor. Mike, what's your take on all of this?
In what regard? What
in regards to the attacks and everything else that they're coming up against all of us, and anybody like.
Well, I find it first fanciful. The amount of data that I see from you guys convinces me that not being a smoker or a vapor or a former smoker, that you guys are on the right side, and their intentions are just to blunt what you're doing, I think, so well in your campaigns and the information that you put out. I mean, it's an incredible amount that you guys actually put out week in, week out. So, it's a big fight. I don't know personally, where it's going to end, or who's going to win this one. I'm glad I'm not a smoker. I think I'm glad I'm not a vapor either. But from my side of the fence, yeah, it looks like are the billionaires going to win out? I don't know, but the fight is ahead, and it's going to be a tough one. But they're going to just keep coming at you guys. I know what H is saying, waving to the guys, and maybe they are watching. Who knows? In some form or another, but they should start realizing that. I think none of you guys are going to go away. You're going to have a bigger team over the years, and I only hope that you prevail in the end. That's my view.
Well, as John Q. Public, who isn't really part of this, what is your suggestion for us to be able to better reach John Q. Public? What do we need to do to get other people outside of the echo chamber?
Boots on the ground, I think. I don't know. Personally, I think you need influence. You're going to need influencers. I mean, these guys are just are the people that will spread the word a little harder. But that's only one aspect. No. Yeah, try that one. But that's not. I'm not saying that's going to be the answer. That's not the answer. It's just an attitude. You look at all the teenagers, and their attitude is, "I'm going to vape because I can get it." It's tough.
Paul, you were shaking your head no. Why?
It depends on the influences and which country they're coming from and what they're actually talking about. That's one thing. Secondly, Mike, you're here in Australia. I don't know if you know the whole scope of what's going on here right now, but we thought that Greg Hunt was bad, like as a health minister. Butler has put what he's been putting in play on steroids now.
Yeah, okay? I understand that. Yeah,
and for the first time in almost 10 years, we're now watching the smoking rate here in Australia grow. And that makes no sense to me in any way, shape, or form. We have a safer alternative, yet we need a prescription to get that alternative. I smoked for over 30 years, ended up with lung issues. And now, I'm in my 50s, and I need a prescription for what exactly? I'm not a patient.
Yeah.
Okay. That's where I draw the line. We've never been a patient. We've only been a patient of chest clinics and, you know, going through testing and everything else. But when we find a safer way out, they don't want to listen. That's part of the problem. The second part of the problem that I see here and around the world is that, and I've been out of the advocacy game for a minute, but I keep my finger on the pulse. I'm seeing now that regardless of what we do or say, they try and cut us down at every single point, regardless of what we're doing.
I see it on the news, mate. I've sent a couple of videos I've taken from Channel 7 News at night, and it's just bagging vaping with ridiculous claims. And they're not even a news item at times. It's just their agenda is bag vaping, period. But it makes no sense.
Well, here's the thing about Australia, okay? And I'm going to say this openly, we're the little red-headed stepchild to the rest of the world. And right now, we're in the spotlight. Because if Butler gets his way come, I don't know, December, January, he wants to ban open systems and completely put this under prescription. Yeah, Greg Hunt tried to introduce this. It didn't work. It backfired like tenfold in his, you know, when he was in power as the health minister. Now that we've got Butler thinks, oh, we can double down. This will work. This is never going to work in Australia because we've always been this way. New Zealand, and I watched a conference a few days ago, and I looked at the demographic between Australia and New Zealand. Same age groups, everything. Australia, for the first time in years, we're now watching the smoking rate rise. For what reason? Because we're not allowed to play in the real world like many others do. It really sucks. And there was a question asked before, have I seen younger people smoking? Yes. Not vaping. They're now smoking, which alarms me.
Yeah.
And I've not seen that in 10 years, but in the last 12 months, I have seen this in lower socioeconomic areas. It scares me. What are we doing here?
Not a great deal by the sound of it. Yeah, I don't see that here. I'm on the Central Coast.
Yep.
We just see vapes everywhere. In the hand, on the ground, in the parks, in the bins. They're everywhere. But continue.
Yeah, but that's the thing. We wanted a regulated industry here in Australia. They wouldn't listen to us. We put in over 4,000 submissions from the vaping community and from people inside and outside. And Nancy was sent the document that like under FOI, and a lot of them were disregarded. They only listened to what they wanted to listen to.
Yeah,
it's the scariest. No, it's the scariest thing I've seen ever here in Australia. Our voice is not even.
It actually freaked me out when I read it because it was just optics. And we knew this was going into this whole submission thing with Australia, that they were just asking for submissions. They were going to do whatever the hell they wanted to anyway. But I mean, they completely not only disregarded what everybody had said to them, but they used the FCTC tactic and just basically said, oh yeah, they're all, affiliated with tobacco, so we're not going to listen to them. I mean, they're just so deeply entrenched, which, really sadly, confirms my thought that, Australia is the poster child for FCTC. They want to see everybody like Australia and completely ignore the fact that it's a complete failure.
Correct.
You know?
And I've been saying this for the last 3 years. So Australia was the testing ground or ground zero for the FCTC and what they want to bring into the rest of the world. And I just look at it and I went, we've got Australian scientists now going, or they say they're a scientist, but they're not. The qualifications of public health and, whatever, but they're rolling around the world on this dollar and they're trying to promote this same mantra, which a lot of the countries.
Paul, in New Zealand, we've got a marketing professor that's the head, and Chan knows who I'm talking about, who's, pushing the narrative here, right? And I'm going to interrupt you for a second because I actually do want to ask Jan something because I don't get TV or newspapers because I'm just a Luddite. Jan, how much stuff has been on TV and in the newspapers lately about vaping that you've seen?
There has been a few bits, but not a whole lot. The Asthma and Respiratory Foundation just had their conference here in Wellington. So a bit of stuff came out around that. And that was kind of touted as, by the media as like public health professionals have kind of gotten together to come up with recommendations about what to do about the youth vaping epidemic. But there hasn't been too much of late, but we still don't have a government, and it's been 6 weeks since the election. 5 weeks, yeah. So that's kind of like where everybody's head is at the moment.
Yeah. All right. Now, Clarice, I'm going to ask you how many vaping related articles have you seen in the TV or in the newspaper in the Philippines?
The past month, probably none. I mean, I think the last one that I saw was sometime around in September. I think it was September, wherein there was this news about.
No, there was quite a lot of coverage of the Asia Harm Reduction Forum.
Oh yeah, well, aside from that, the Asia harm reduction, I don't think I've seen any articles about vaping since September. But other than that, well, yeah, since we recently concluded the Asia harm reduction here in the Philippines, there's a lot of buzz about that also in the news and in the newspapers. I mean, TV and newspapers both, right? But yeah, aside from that, I don't really see much. And there's nothing regarding COP10 also. I didn't see any coverage as to the concluded meeting in the United Nations headquarters also. There's no news about that. So I don't know what happened during those closed doors meeting. So yeah.
Okay. And H, Thailand. What have you seen in Thailand?
We're seeing some more favorable media. We're seeing the lines being drawn a lot more clearly than they were before in terms of the government now listening to both sides of the story. There's now a panel has been set up of so-called experts to discuss e-cigarettes here. We're seeing some more favorable articles in the media. By favorable, I mean they're sort of like asking questions. Why is this like this? Why are we so not following the science and that kind of thing? But again, it comes down to personalities here. There's a handful of people who control the narrative here. A handful of people. And I think that it isn't going to be too long before they are exposed as being the charlatans that they clearly are. You know, I mean, there's a part of me that hopes that they just back down and go, you know what, we might have got this wrong. Let's talk, because that's what actually needs to happen. Whether or not that happens, I don't know, because I think we've all experienced it. You know, that handful of people in each of our countries that is making the noise, you're not going to sway them. This is their career. For them to accept any criticism as being valid would negate their entire life's work and compromise their funding. So they're not going to do it. So unlikely. But that's what needs to happen. We need to talk. We need to, that's what, you know, and I'll say it, and I said it many times, there isn't a single person that's involved with scope or advocacy in tobacco harm reduction advocacy on the planet that wouldn't welcome the chance to sit down and have a sensible adult conversation with people in tobacco control that want to sit on tobacco harm reduction. We would welcome that discussion. We're ready, we're more than willing to sit down and talk. We're more than willing to share our life stories, to share our experiences, to put them in the right direction for finding the right science. Because while most of us are not scientists, and we don't claim to really all of us understand everything that's in there, we understand that the science is certainly on the side of tobacco harm reduction. Not just the science, but also the mandate of the FCTC itself, which they conveniently ignore. So, yeah. Talking is the way, you know, diplomacy. That's the other way, isn't it? We see none of that from the other side. We just see attacks. So they're the Putins. We're the Ukraines. We just don't get the support from the United States, NATO, and you're muted, Nancy.
Of course I'm muted. It's always better for everybody when I'm muted. But of course you're not going to see that. I mean, we've been asking for that for how many years? Although, in saying that, I do see a change happening, like you just said, but it's not going to happen overnight. I think it's going to be another couple of years that we'll see something give. I don't know about Australia. Sorry, guys, you are the redhead stepchild. It's terrible that you said that. I laughed when you said that, but you kind of are. But I think we are going to see some changes in the next couple of years. I don't know what those changes are going to be, because honestly, I was talking to Damien from ETHRA, and the stuff that they're proposing in, you know, the EU is just insane. Okay. And of course, the stuff that happens in the EU filters down. Then, of course, you've got the whole disposable issue going on in the UK right now, and then the flavor bans in Canada. I mean, it's basically a veritable shitstorm of prohibition and restriction. But, you know, all you got to do is look at all those countries. You know, eventually it's going to come back and bite them in the ass, because now they're going to lose control over everything, and they're going to lose their revenue over it. That's if they only care about revenue.
I think we, as advocates, need to not lose sight of the fact that our principal focus is FCTC COP 10. Whenever it might happen to come up about whatever they happen to think they might be talking about, that's our focus, because fundamentally it is COP that is creating the script. They're the ones who control the message. So they're the ones we need to really be focusing on. Particularly now, and that's hence we're here. But I think, you know, we need to be getting the message across to anybody from FCTC COP, any delegates. You are not, if you're following the script that you've been given, you are not taking care of public health. You are not addressing the issues. You are not taking care of the people that you're supposed to be taking care of. You are not honoring your commitment to your government and to the electorate of your country to do the right thing with regards to public health and tobacco harm reduction and tobacco control. You are not on the right page. Okay, so please read those articles and the research that the FCTC has exposed as being tobacco funded. It isn't. Read it. And if you want to have an open mind, you'll find out, maybe there's more to this than what I'm being told by the people who are being paid to tell me what
they also should probably look at this, because the Western Pacific Declaration, which was sent out, okay? And you know what's interesting about that is I sent that out to the office, and they still haven't signed for it. It's sitting there. They haven't signed for it yet to read it. Funny that, huh?
Yeah. Never mind. We published it everywhere.
I know.
We got it. Yeah.
And then
you
we've
can't
got
get away from this. You know, you can hide under your stick your heads in the sand as much as you like. The world is still going on around you, and you're going to get just left out. Ultimately, you might survive the rest of your life, give you money, getting your script handed to you, and making trouble for all the people that are trying to take care of their own health. But ultimately, this life or the next, you're going to realize, oops, I was on the wrong side of this because I didn't listen, because my mind was closed, because my eyes were shut, my ears were totally sealed. That isn't how you.
How many people are going to die in the meantime, Age?
Public anything. Sorry?
How many people are going to die in the meantime? That's the thing.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. We are looking at a death toll of tens of millions. Since the FCT started, I can't even calculate that much. It's 8 million times 20, I don't know. It's hundreds of millions of people. Since we've been on air, hundreds, if not thousands of people have died from smoking related. And these guys are sitting there twiddling their thumbs. Oh, let's go to Panama. Oh, let's not go to Panama. Oh, let's ban this. And let's not ban that. Let's do this. Yeah, none of what you're doing makes any sense, guys. None of it. And you're doing it for me, for everybody everybody else. None of it is helping. None of it. None of it. So continuing attacking us, if that's what you think, but please start looking at the evidence. Stop reading those scripts. Start comparing them to actually the truth, and stop lying and stop putting that misinformation out, because you are hurting people. Millions and millions and millions of people. You are wrong. Face it. Own it. Move on. Do the right thing.
Yeah,
So
fair call. Fair call. I'm gonna switch over to Jan real quick. Mike's falling asleep, so if he wants to leave, Mike, if you want to leave, you can. Because you're falling asleep. I'm gonna switch over to Jan. Jan, I want you to, if you would, okay, give us your take on what you see happening now that the COP's been postponed. When do you think it'll happen, and what do you think we should be doing in the lead up to the net whenever they decide to reschedule it?
Oh, geez. I have no idea what they will do next. The funny thing is, like, they really actually don't even need to have a meeting. You know, when you think about it, because they've had all those little pre-meetings and they've got all their scripts done and they've got everything decided about what's going to happen, what they need to say, all the rest of it. And there's nobody there who has any objectivity who's going to observe it anyway, because they shut all the doors. So they actually really don't need a meeting. It's like God, it's so farcical. I mean, I can't even kind of like think of something that it's like. You know, to have something so predetermined, but pretend then to have a meeting.
It's like the Russian government.
You might be right. So, you know, and so I've got no idea what would happen next, quite honestly, or when, or if they'd ever have a meeting. I mean, the fact that they were going to spend, what was it? Was it $9 million or something that meeting was going to cost?
$5 million the Panamanian Ministry of Health was going to spend on it for the COP and consortium, and then they went and asked for another $2 million.
Yeah.
And they denied. Yeah.
Exactly. And you know, also, I mean, a lot of it is just completely ridiculous. Like, I think I was looking at the same conference that Paul might have been the other day, and there was somebody comparing, like, the United Kingdom with Chad, yeah, and saying that, like, tobacco harm reduction in the way that is sort of in the UK doesn't apply to Chad, because of their much lower life expectancy and, you know, the population and their demographics and, you know, like, and their low smoking rate. And I'm thinking, well, maybe they could have taken the money that they would have spent sending their delegate to the FCTC COP 10 and spent it on whatever they need in their country to, you know, like improve the life expectancy of their citizens instead of bloody tobacco control when you've got 9% of people smoking or something, you know, like who cares?
Well, I mean, did you see the article that Jeff posted from the Prensa in Panama about the doctors complaining about the amount of money that was being spent on the COP, which when they already have issues with, you know, incubators for babies and medicines and facilities, and what a waste of money this is. Times that by like you're saying, you know, times that by all those countries that are in LMICs and what good they could do with that money.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Much better ways to spend that money. You know, be it on, I don't know, clean water supply or whatever it is that your particular country needs. If you don't need tobacco control, if you don't need tobacco harm reduction, don't spend the money.
Yeah, just that's why, I mean, you know, when he was that thing that he read, the CAFRA response to who, I mean, they're a detriment to public health when you think about it, because they're so busy trying to promote their own agenda and, you know, maintain their own relevance that they're actually causing harm.
Well, I
And
mean, that thing is just like straight out projection, and you know, Freud would be having a field day about that.
You are the psych major. You
Absolutely
would
what
know
it
that.
is. Yeah.
She's the psych major. She'd know that. Yeah, fair call. I mean, hey, Paul, because Clarice had to run out. Paul, what do you see happening? What is your projection? Prediction.
My prediction or projection? I've got both, because prediction is that they're going to have a secret online only COP 10. And this is something that's been tossed about around the world through a few different friends that I have, bypassing everything that they wanted to put down in Panama. And next minute, we're going to see the FCTC completely rewritten overnight without any input from the public around the world. That's one thing. The second thing that I see is COP 10, when they have it, or when they choose another country to try and destroy or try and play fun and games in, let's see what happens. I know there's unrest in Panama right now, but man, what they tried doing, extorting money from the government, and the way the economy is there, that's pathetic. There's way too much money running around in their coffers. They could have paid their own way. I even got told that they didn't want to do it because, well, they had to install a spa bath for some of the delegates at the hotel. And I thought, you got to be kidding me. You know, I'm hearing all. No, I'm hearing all kinds of shit, and I've got friends that live in Panama, and when I heard that one, I thought, yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. What, you want to go and stay in a 5-star hotel? You want everything provided for you, but the spa bath wasn't big enough, so you could do reach arounds for everyone else that was in the audience. Yeah, wake up. You know, come on. Seriously, if you want to have a meeting, open the doors. Be open and fucking honest. Open the doors and let's talk. If you want to keep this behind closed doors, then who's getting a reach around tonight? Sorry.
No, it's cool. It's fine. I mean, we're adults. Nobody under the age of 18 should be watching. And if they can't handle, you know, the shortened term for unlawful carnal knowledge, then they probably shouldn't be here. Clarice, what is your prediction for what's going to happen in the next few months?
Well, I hope they finally push through with COP 10 because, as H mentioned, it's, well, what I find bizarre though is that these people keep on emphasizing how bad vaping is. That's established, right? That's their point mainly. But they have the luxury of time to actually postpone something as important as this that would, um define laws or rules in all over the world. So that's what I I find bizarre that they keep on amplifying the idea that vaping is bad. They keep the misinformation going, and yet it's like there's no urgency to actually do COP 10. They could do this online as well. I assume this could be done online. I mean, we can do this online. How can it not be done online? So I hope they push through with it sooner rather than later. And I do hope that the delegates from our respective countries will be more open to hearing from us, or if they think we are evil people, people from CAFRA or people who are advocates, they should just go out and talk to a consumer who's just right outside along the streets. There are so many consumers that would be more than willing to share their story. So I think yeah, I hope they push through with it. The sooner the better, and realize the urgency, because as H was mentioned earlier, a lot, thousands or millions of people could die every minute that we are wasting time on deciding on these laws and on these regulations. So yeah, there.
Cool. Thank you, Clarice. Mike, do you have any thoughts?
No, I can't top everything that's been said there.
Well, we're actually at the end of the CAFRA section. I mean, we can all stay here and hang out because nobody's asking us any questions.
I thought you were going to say we're at the end of the CAFRA meeting.
Kinda. We kind of went worldwide with our meeting this month. I just want to let you know that both Samsul and Asa sent their apologies. Asa's sick. I think he's got the flu now. Jan just recovered, so you have COVID, I think, though. And Samsul, there was one of his employees, something happened to them. So they sent their apologies. So they didn't just blow us off. Although they did, but they didn't do it on purpose. Anything else that anybody would like to bring up before we just go into open live discussion, which is probably just going to be all of us anyway? Any other CAFRA related business? Paige?
No, I just wanted to say that whether the SCTC does its stuff online or in person, until and unless, as Paul says, they open the doors, it's irrelevant. You're not talking for us. You're talking about us. You're not talking to us. You're talking at us. No.
Yeah.
Just no.
Yeah. No.
Well, also, if they're only going to do it online, there's no junket and spa baths and stuff, is there?
Well, that means that certain people are getting hold on to more of the Bloomberg and big pharma money to spend on spas. Yeah,
I'm sure they're expected to spend it. Yeah.
Well, they do. Sure. It's important that we have a spa. It's been proven that having a bubble bath every day is good for your health. So I've installed one in all the bathrooms in my house. Thanks, Mr. Bloomberg. I don't know. But yeah, with that amount of money. Look, I mean, just think about this. If Bloomberg had read the science and not listened to the fools that have convinced him to put his money into attacking tobacco harm reduction, imagine where we'd be if Bloomberg had said, no, that's bullshit. These things are actually pretty functional. And he'd put the money into our side of the, we'd be there, wouldn't we? It's all about the money.
That's pretty sad. True. It's true, but it's sad.
It's a tragedy, is what it is. It's a tragedy.
All right. Well, it's 9 o'clock. So if anybody has to go to bed, Mike, I'm looking at you, Captain. He's like,
tell you something. We gotta have dinner yet.
oh yeah, it's only 7:00 for you. But if anybody needs to leave, please feel free. I'm gonna stick around. I guess H can stick around. Paul, stick around. Clarice, you need to rest because you're not well. Jan, you sticking around?
Yeah, I'll stick around for a bit. Yep.
Okay, so there we are. So if you want to bell, you may. So just let us know.
Okay. I'll catch you all later.
Thank you, Captain. Okay, there's Mike. Hold on. Did he know how to get himself out? Probably not. There we go. So it's just us now, guys. Let's talk about Mike. No, I'm kidding.
Well, now you say that.
That's my fear. That's why I'm staying for a bit.
That's too funny. Oh my god. Too funny. So Jan, I wanted to talk to you really quick. This is kind of not really related, but kind of is related. We don't have a government. What do you think is going to happen here in New Zealand?
Oh, well, excuse me. I can't see that anything that we're interested in tonight is going to be of any particular interest to any of the parties trying to form a government. So I think it's something that's just going to be kind of put on, the back burner for a bit.
I agree. I'm wondering if we're actually going to wind up going for another election. Because one person's saying one thing and another person's saying another thing, and it doesn't seem like they've all agreed.
Yes, but if you look at the personalities in that mix, it's hardly surprising.
I know. Paul, I wanted to ask you something. Thank you for that, Jan. Paul, I wanted to ask you something. sCOPe had another expo here in New Zealand that none of us knew about. Were you aware of that?
I was told like 24 hours before it. That's it.
Because I saw that Motto had posted about it. I'm like, oh, that's nice. Nobody told us about it. And the vendors didn't even know about it.
No one knew about it. I was actually, I just sent a message to Sam, to Bogan, see if he'd jump in and put his 5 cents worth, because I thought you were going to ask a question like this. I had no idea until 24 hours before. Something went wrong with that, and by the sounds of it, it was just closed shop vendors. But there was 2 days.
Vendors weren't even there.
Yeah, correct. But most of the international players sent representatives, and I'm like, what the? I'm going to swear now. What the fuck happened? Someone obviously screwed everything up with that one.
Yeah, because the local vape shop here, I know the girl, and she's like, there was a thing, and I'm like, yeah, there was a thing, and she's like, huh? Nobody let them know.
Some of the major players sent like representatives from China, and I went, huh? What? Where?
I mean, and they were discussing, the new products that they're going to introduce for New Zealand. Yeah, probably run by the same guy. Yeah, the new products, because we've got the disposable thing on the 1st of December, and then we've got, the other thing in 21st of March, and they were discussing all of that, and it's like, wait a minute, what?
I went, yeah, Mark. Yeah, I know who was running this thing, and I was on one of the mailing lists a while back for this clown, and I thought, what's going on here? Who put this together? How was it put together? Who was invited, and who was actually on the list? I thought, no, something doesn't make sense right now.
No, something definitely doesn't make sense at all. Clarice, darling, you're falling asleep too, so I'm going to ask you one last question.
Yeah, my medicine is starting to kick in.
I know, I can see that. This is the final question for you. How many vape shops are closing now in light of the new regulations?
Well, in my area, there are a lot. I mean, let's put it into perspective. Let's say there are 50 shops within a 3 kilometer radius in my area.
Okay.
Sometimes I see 20 of those 50 shops closed. So my worry right now is, even though we do have a law in place, I think accessibility might be an issue soon if these shops keep on closing down. But I do understand because there is a store like just across the street from my house, and
Nice.
I've spoken with him. Yeah, that's how accessible it is. I've spoken with him, and I asked him a few questions, like, because they have branches in other parts of the city. And I asked him, why is your branch in this area closed down? I drove by there last night and it was closed down. I was supposed to buy something. And then
Yeah.
he told me that um, people from agencies like, a Department of Trade and Industry, or the BIR, the Bureau of Internal Revenue, they handle the taxes. I was told that their permits are being closely and meticulously looked at. So
Mm-hmm.
if there's just one thing that they weren't able to comply with, or like their receipt is missing from paying certain fees, they get they get as punishment closed down for like 2 or 3 days. Yeah.
Okay.
So I told him, so does this mean that, for example, you're just a salesperson, you're the merchandiser in the store, you have to also be knowledgeable about the papers, the documents. You have to always be ready to show agency people that, hey, we've already complied. These are our documents, because they do surprise visits every now and then, and they are wearing civilian clothing. So it's hard to determine whether they're from the government or not. So apparently that is what's been happening. But
Okay.
I do understand that we are still like in an interim period for the compliance with all these permits and documents. So I do hope that it gets sorted out soon, because I am worried that if more and more shops will be closing down, accessibility will soon be an issue.
Yeah. Now,
What's
um,
can I ask? Do you have any insight what's going on in the provinces?
in the provinces, they're not that how should I put this? They're not that strict, I would say, when it comes to the documentations, because my husband, he's from the province. So from time to time we go to his province, and I've been seeing vape shops, like small vape shops, and they don't look like they have permit the way I see it, the way I see the store. It doesn't look like it's compliant with permits and stuff. But I don't see any closed shops in the provinces. I don't think they're that strict. The LGU, the municipalities in the provinces, I don't think that they are that strict versus here in Metro Manila, because most of the shops that I've seen closed down are from Metro Manila. So there.
So, I mean, just following on from that, since Nancy's not here, is vaping as prevalent in the provinces and in the rural areas as it is in the big cities?
From what I've been seeing, there is still a big number of people who are cigarette smokers in the provinces, because you have to understand, here in the Philippines, like for Paul and Jan, H has been here for a long time, but for Paul and Jan, you have to understand that it's sort of a convenience thing sometimes for people who are looking to smoke. For them, it's easier to just light a cigarette, because, again, they can buy it by the stick. And it's much cheaper compared to buying, let's say, a disposable or a refillable vape. There's a big difference in price. I would tell you that. Like for a cigarette stick, let's say it's 15 pesos a stick, and the disposable is around 300 pesos. So that's what, 285 pesos in difference. So a lot of the municipalities are third class municipalities, which means they are not gonna say poor, but they are a bit on the lower section when it comes to status. So a lot of them often just resolve to buy cigarettes than opting to, let's say, invest in a disposable or a refillable vape. But as far as what I have seen, there is still a big number of smokers in the provinces, especially in third class municipalities.
So, last question from me. We've been looking at the Philippines for a long time. Are we any closer to figuring out how many people actually vape in the Philippines?
I hope we do get like a certain definite data. I mean, like a national data that would really count how many vapors we have right now in the whole Philippines. I think the last data is from 2019 or 2018, if I'm not mistaken. So it does really need some updating, and I don't know how it will be able to how it will be able to establish like a bank of data for all vapors. So it really does need some updating. But I would say that there is a big population of vapors. I can't remember the exact figure, but I do know that there's a big population. But then again, I would just like to clarify that most of the vapors are located in the national capital region. And we have very little data when it comes to provinces. So I do hope we get, statistics from these places.
Okay. Thanks for that, Clarice. You feel like you need to go to bed now. You're like, eh.
The really interesting part, though, with the Philippines is that they've got some of the best mod makers in the world.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bottom line.
That's true.
And this makes me wonder, why has there been no surveys done over these years? And I thank you to Sam and VA. Like, I lost my collection earlier this year, and I now have another VA in my hands. Thank you, Philippines, and thank you to VA. But it surprises me because the Philippines came out of nowhere as engineers and have been supplying the vaping industry around the world with high-end mods now since 2015. Why is there no figures on what the vaping population is? It makes no sense.
I think it's going to be a really big task for just one person or a group of persons to collect all of the data that we are going to need. But I do think that it's achievable, provided we get the appropriate people to do the data, because we don't want getting biased data also. So I do think it's a big task. It's a really huge task because the Philippines is an archipelago, so it's something that should be factored in. And we have one of the biggest populations in Southeast Asia. So it's going to take like a big group of people to really collect the data. And as I mentioned, I think the last data was from 2019, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm sure that it was from pre-pandemic. So there.
GSTHR lists the number of vapors in the Philippines at 2.7 million people.
A bulk of
In
that is from the
2021.
National Capital Region. I can assure you that.
Yeah. So, I mean, considering if you think about the population of the Philippines, you could probably add another, what, 500,000 to that at least?
Yeah, probably. At least.
Yeah. So let's just round it up and say 3.5 million. And that's a guesstimate. Does that answer the question, Paul?
You look at Thailand, where they came up with just an awesome statistic. They said there's 72,000 vapors in the whole of Thailand. Oh, really? I mean, I probably see 10% of them every time I go out, but according to the fellow that's spearheading the charge against tobacco harm reduction and vaping in particular, there's about 70-something thousand people. And he got that figure from the government's survey. They do this like semi-annual survey of households in Thailand, and they go to like 80,000 households, and they ask him a whole series of questions. And of the 80-something thousand households that they canvassed, 72,000 households reported that someone in the household had vaped at some point. So he extrapolated from that the entire vaping population of Thailand was 72,000 or whatever it was. And that's the figure he presented to the government. We don't need to do anything about this. There's only 72,000 people vaping. It's a non-issue. That kind of didn't work because half of the government here vapes. So they had the same thought of, well, if there's only 72,000 people vaping, I must see 10% of them every day because it's everywhere. So, yeah, but it's this kind of like, using absolute rubbish figures, making a headline out of it, and then saying, there you go, my job's done. I've lied, and now the headline's gone out. We're done. And then just accuse anybody who questions it of being a tobacco shill and funded for, in NASA's case,
It's a
$80
tobacco
million
control way.
a year.
I mean, they listed Australia. They listed it's only 3.5 million people vape. Paul, would that be a correct number? Paul locked up.
No. I'm trying to put my head around the figure because dual use under the last survey was 2.2 million, and like straight up vaping was at 1.6. So yeah, their figures are way off. And now that Butler also wants to implement not a 12.5% per year tax, he wants to implement a $15 per year tax until 2030 on tobacco products. I just said, okay, welcome to a bigger black market. Thanks for coming. As for anything that the Australian government wants to do, I don't know what happened in the previous government, but this government I thought would have been a little bit better. But now we're finding out that Butler, maybe I should start calling him Lord Vader or Lord Butler, because he is tenfold in comparison to what Hunt was. Look, I've got no words for Australia, and as I said, we are the red-headed stepchild, and I hate to say this, but because of my situation, what I've been through since April of this year, yes, I have snuck back a couple of times and had a few cigarettes. So be it, because I lost my whole collection. I'll be blatantly honest.
No,
because
I mean, you got to do what you got to do. But at the situation that you're in and the government that you're in, it's no surprise that that's happened, because I think a lot of people are actually reverting back, especially like outside of the major metropolitan areas. You know what
Yeah,
I'm
but
saying?
I'm still in temporary accommodation, Nancy.
I get that, but
and
you know,
I've come back into a world that, you know, is quite strange. You know, I'm sitting here with a whole bunch of fishing rods in the background, so be it. But that's work now for me. I still advocate, but I'm still an advocate, but I find it so hard here in Australia when I actually had 2 devices taken off me the other day by a cop. Where's your prescription? It was out of date by 24 hours, and I've had stuff stopped now at customs. Never in the past have I had that done.
yeah, but we
And
knew that they were going to start cracking down on that. I mean, they're even cracking down here in New Zealand on imports and stuff. I mean, Mark has ordered equipment, and it sat there held up for like 3 weeks, and then he finally gets it. He's like, I'm never going to get it, and then he gets it. So the crackdown is the entire. It's everywhere. I mean, especially now, you know, once China implements this thing where they're not going to ship stuff to places unless the stuff that's being shipped complies with the laws in that country. This is only going to get worse. But I want to get back to something. I want to throw a number at Jan, because we were talking about numbers before. Jan, the New Zealand government is saying there's 359,000 vapors. Now, I seem to recall about 3 years ago we were at 250,000. So that's an increase of 100,000 vapors, right?
Yes.
Does that make sense to you? Because I would have thought it was higher.
Oh, is it higher? I don't know. What I kind of find is, yeah, there's probably, I suspect, always an underestimate of the numbers of adult vapors and overestimates of kid vapors. Yeah.
Right.
Like, you know, I'll bring up the Asthma and Respiratory Foundation again and their survey where they found 25% of kids were vaping regularly.
Oh, yeah, that study.
Yeah, that study. Yeah, you know, and that, you know, they found that, and it actually even says in their report that their sampling method wasn't robust enough to be able to generalize it to the population. Because of the way that their sampling happened and the responses and all that kind of stuff. But they then continued to do that and came up with that 25%, which has turned into a factoid, which is just parroted over and over again by the media.
If you say something enough times in the media, people believe it, whether it's true or not. People just suck it up, you know? But my point was, and it's kind of like what you just said, is if let's just say there was another 100,000 vapors in New Zealand in the last, like, say, 3 years. That's not the kids.
No, it's not the kids.
Okay.
It is definitely not the kids.
Did you catch, did you finally get to watch E6 Summit and see Ben Udan's presentation?
I've seen some of it, and I did watch Ben's presentation, and yeah, I mean, you know, that was pretty telling, wasn't it? When, you know, you have somebody kind of like turning around and saying that, you know, for every smoker who stops smoking because of vaping, 80 kids then start vaping who would never have smoked. And he worked out the figures, and like it kind of like it came to like 3 times. We should have in New Zealand, the amount of kids vaping should actually be 3 times our current population.
yeah, 15 million. I love it.
Yes. Yes. So, you know, I mean, yeah, brilliant. Because, you know, it's obviously nonsense, but I mean, people don't think about it. They don't actually sit there and think, oh, well, that actually can't be possible. They just go, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, it's really bad. Yeah.
Grog just said something that was pretty hilarious. Media 101 by Bloomberg. Whether it's truthful or not is irrelevant. Which kind of ties into what you were saying before, H, about, you know, headlines and even making them as sensationalistic as possible just to get the idea out there. I mean, you know, part of me, you know, thinks two wrongs don't make a right. But then the other part of me is like, well, shit, if it works, then maybe that's what we should do. But it still irks me on a level of integrity. I can't. Do we lie or not lie, but do we stretch the truth or sensationalize something? Is that really two wrongs don't make a right, or what? I don't know how to approach that, you know?
No. Because that's what they're doing here in Australia, Nancy.
I know, but H, what's your take on that? Because that is something that, you know, bothers me.
In my opinion, when you look at any media outlet, they have an agenda, and they're only run with stories that will resonate with their audience, which is what I was saying earlier. You kind of need to, you know, target the demographic that you're trying to get your message to. But the media will only take on stuff that they see a benefit for them in it, whatever that publication is. I mean, part of it is serving the public interest, and that's in limited supply in some outlets and more in others. But the truth is a highly fluid medium when it comes down to media, because my truth isn't going to be the same as your truth. I mean, there's always three sides to every discussion: your side, my side, and the truth. So for the media to get them to publish anything positive about vaping is going to go against the majority of their stands, because they've already stated, because they've been paid to do it or influenced to do it, certain things as headlines. Many newspapers, many media outlets, they've already said vaping is just as bad as smoking. There's a kid epidemic. Flavors are terribly bad. The packaging, the this, the that, the that. They've already got the message. The message has been really well put out, and it's been put out using lies. The message itself is a lie that's coming from the anti-tobacco harm reduction clique. It is a lie. Everything they say is not true. Every headline they put, regardless of whether it's sensational or not, is not true. It does not have evidence to back it up. But they're using the tried and tested routine to get a message across, which is to use an outrageous headline to get people's attention. You don't have to justify that headline much, other than to say, some people might think that the headline, but you can present your message in there, couched in the language that will resonate with the demographic that you're targeting. But the headline itself is what draws people into a story, and most people don't read for more than the first paragraph anyway. So you have to have a headline that draws them in, and the first paragraph has to state what you have to say. Anything else that they read after that is bunts. It's extra. But the headline is key. So is it wrong to put a headline that you know is untruthful? Yes, morally, perhaps, but pragmatically, no, because that's what's happening. If your enemy's firing 50, millimeter shells at you, and you say, yeah, well, we're only using air rifle pellets because, that's what we do, because that's, safer, you're going to get killed, right? You need to go and find yourself some 50 cal or bigger, because that's what you're up against. So we didn't draw the lines here. We're playing in somebody else's playground. Actually, it's our playground, but it's been taken over. The teachers are bullying us. What do? You come together as a class and you complain to authorities as high up as you possibly can. You won't get anywhere if you're sitting in the playground fighting. and demanding, an altercation, you won't. But you have to find their weak points, and you have to find where you can work with them. And it's the same with the media. How can you work with the media when they don't seem to be responding? Well, you give them what they want, and what they want is a way to pique the interest of their readers, whether it's true or not. And in our case, we're telling the truth, but we can use a headline that is perhaps less truthful but impactful, that draws readers in. Because how else are we going to get our message across to a wider audience if we don't give them a reason to become engaged? And the first reason to get engaged is the headline.
Fair,
So, yeah.
Cool. All right. No, I understand that. Clarice, honey, you want to go sleeps now?
I'll go ahead.
Thank you for joining us.
Get well soon, Clarice.
Feel better, darling. See ya.
Good to see you again, Clarice.
Full credit.
I'm gonna have to say something to Rog, but honestly, Bloomturd and the rest of the crew, it's becoming old news now. There's other players on the block, and they're now becoming very like cherry flavor. Like, you remember Cherry Robitussin?
Yeah.
Robitussin. Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
That's why I can't drink Jägermeister. Yeah.
Yeah, but now they're becoming like Robitussin, and they're not being believed pretty much now.
I think, like I said, I see the change, Paul. There is a change coming. It's not as fast as we would all like, of course, but I do see some changes.
Yeah.
But I also see the changes are the negative people is a different class of people. There's different groups now. It's not just all one person. And I think the thing that frustrates the shit out of me is that, people are focusing on the youth thing, although that's starting to die out now. We can't focus on the youth thing because the youth thing, like Jan said once, Jan was brilliant and said this: you can't fight something that doesn't exist.
Correct.
Okay. We know that. Okay. But the thing that we've got to focus on is we've got to focus on the people that are still don't have access and are the people that are still dying, the adults. And, and I'm hoping, this is my hope, because of the letter from the 52 organizations and because of the special rapporteur for the UN asking for all those submissions on harm reduction, I'm hoping that this postponement will give those people enough time to come up with a report of some sort and possibly deal to FCTC, because you've got to remember that FCTC is under the UN. And I find it very interesting, the timing of those of the submission process, and then it was a shortened submission process, that it was right before the COP, right before the COP, the Conference of Parties. So I wonder what impact that's going to have. That's something that's sitting in the back of my head and kind of cogitating right now, is what is the impact of that going to be? I don't know if that makes sense or not.
No, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense to me.
Any viewers who might not know what we're talking about, there was a document sent to the UN Rapporteur's office, was it?
There was a letter that was sent to the head of the UNCHR, and then there was a submission phase from the Special Rapporteur for the UN asking about submissions on harm reduction.
And the general gist of the submission, which was signed by numerous organizations and associations around the world, was essentially what?
The message that was sent to him was that we have a right to health, and that the FCTC is not giving us our right to health. Okay. And then that letter went out and was delivered in October. And then about 2 weeks later, the Special Rapporteur issued the call for submissions on harm reduction. All right, wait a minute. Kurt's just wrote something.
Yeah, you're right, Kurt.
Kurt, you want to come in and join us? I'll do this. Why not? Let's see if I can get this listed. Kurt, hit the link and come in, because you've got really good insights into what's going on in Africa. And I want to hear them. Because Africa is another hotbed right now with all the shit that's going on there.
It's an absolute shit show there as well. Sorry, but I'm being honest.
No, it is. But you notice how they're attacking LMICs. They're attacking the most vulnerable, you know?
Yeah, but, okay, Nancy, how the fuck did Australia become an LMIC?
Well, it's an M. But,
right.
you know, New Zealand's an M too, really. I mean, although we're listed as first world countries in some indices, but in terms compared to like the United States, you know, we're second. Let's see if we can get Kurt come in. I just sent him the link.
Yeah, Brian King needs to disappear like his predecessors. Okay.
Brian King, we saw him at GTNF. H, do you remember that?
Who?
Brian King,
Yep.
the guy that's the head of the FDA center, tobacco center, the young guy. He looks like he's about 28. Yeah.
Yep.
You know, and he was
The
sitting there
young
and he was
guys,
talking.
yeah, they're all young.
I mean, he just was like, he was like a fish out of water, you know? He was just like, and just spouting stuff, and you could tell he's just a script, and he couldn't answer any questions directly. He just was, yeah. Brian King.
Yeah, I'm putting my crazy hair on now.
Oh, okay, now I can hear you. Let's see if Kurt comes in. I want to bring something up because we got a few more. Here he is. Let's see. Kurt.
Hello,
Hello,
everybody.
So you've been listening to us. Give us your take on what's going on with you and everything we're discussing. The floor is yours.
I've been jumping in and out. My son's writing exams, so I had to drop him off at school, and then I had to go fetch him again. Yeah, I think there's a number of points I wanted to touch on. There was a point around pharmaceutical companies, and I don't know if it was covered, but I think a large part of the reason why I believe pharmaceutical companies are getting involved is because of their future losses around cancers and diseases relating to smoking. I don't think they make an enormous amount of money on NRTs, but I do believe that they stand a risk, or there is a risk to their future earnings around oncology and heart and respiratory diseases. And I think these guys think long term. The South African perspective is a complete and utter, as I said, pardon my French, a shit show. We've been having these public hearings, and at these public hearings, we don't actually get notified that the public hearings, or the public themselves don't get notified that these hearings occur. So there is a hearing happening in my province this weekend, and we know that the dates, and we've got an understanding of which cities they will be in, but we have no indication of what those venues are. So I live in Gauteng, which is the smallest province, but the most populous province. So pretty much Gauteng is one major metropolitan city. So we know that it's going to be at certain parts of this province, but we don't know at what venues or where they're going to be held. So I've had the unfortunate opportunity to attend at least 2 of these hearings in outside provinces, and the way it's run and the people that they're allowed to engage in the process is very clearly biased. It's based on a picking of hands. If you raise your hand, they'll then select you to have a say. and the rest of us are left unwanted and leaving the hearing without having an opportunity to have our say. Unfortunately, in some of these, unfortunate for the ad, some of these submissions have been quite laughable. For example, the one where they indicated, the one youth indicated that one puff is equal to 100 cigarettes. Which, unfortunately for them, some of the politicians that are sitting in the committee do have a medical background. And just from a logical point of view, one puff equals 100 cigarettes just didn't gel, It just, in any kind of logic. But the most unfortunate is that we're not having vapers attend these functions or these hearings because they're not advertised. They're simply not advertised, and there's no way of anybody knowing where to go or at what times or so forth until it's too late. And the issue around that is that it's in breach of a constitutional court ruling which was provided to us literally the day before the Portfolio Committee of Health was given this bill to look into. And in there, it basically says that in order for a public hearing to meet a certain criteria, 5 weeks prior to the event, there has to be advertising or broadcasting that this event is going to occur with all the details. As I've said, we only get to hear or only see communication in the mainstream literally the day before the hearing. They also indicate that within X amount of weeks, there has to be some kind of workshop to explain what the bill entails and what the details of the bill is. Those workshops, we haven't seen or heard of where these workshops are. They say that they've had them, but no one that I know of has actually been invited or seen these workshops. And then they're supposed to provide translation to the bill in at least 3 languages that is common in that particular area. South Africa has 11 official languages, actually 12, but 11 written, and the 12th is sign language. And when you get that copy, it's actually quite laughable because it waters down the bill and provides all the real details that are problematic from that translation. They have not yet translated the entire bill in all the languages. And then, of course, when you get there, usually the sessions start late and they finish early, and it's used by a selecting of hands. So you go inside and there's a smallish hall. You sit down and then the committee asks who wants to make a submission, and you raise your hand, and then the chairperson of that committee then will select who he wants to hear from. And that's it. Not many people get a chance to speak. And it's quite, I'm being cynical here, but it's quite blatant that they know who they need to pick in order to have a statement heard. So I've been turned down at least 5 times from having a say.
Why?
Because, Nancy, to be honest, I think they know me. And I think it's based on an article that I wrote in one of our biggest publications in the country, indicating the legitimacy and credibility of this committee is questioned, based on the fact that they've skipped all these constitutional rulings and steps. They've skipped them. So I raised the question that the legitimacy and the credibility of this process needs to be questioned. And I think they took offense to that.
The truth hurts.
Gosh, how thin-skinned of them.
But we'll try again this weekend. We'll try again this weekend because I was supposed to be in Panama, so that's why I tried to attend as many as I could. Now it's given me an opportunity to try again. So I've got 3 opportunities this weekend to see if they'll hear from me. I don't believe they will. But we'll give it a try.
Kurt, one thing that occurred to me, listen to the later part of what you were saying. We've had some in Asia. We've had some strategies where, when we see there's a conference or a hearing or something going on where we're not going to get in, we just hold one on the sides of it, where we just have our point. We invite the other side to come along. They never do, but we just have that. It's a press conference essentially, but you can have a conference where you get like-minded people going, which builds esprit de corps. But it comes up with the messaging, and it comes up with the fact that there are people that are not on board with what's being told, and the media. It depends on how you're able to leverage the media, but the media, they like a fight. They like to see people arguing with each other. They don't mind that if it's credible and it's not going into litigation type of area. They're usually open to the concept of he says that, they say that, both credible. Okay, let's put them together. Let's see what they got to say.
So what I was thinking, H, is that I'm trying to figure out, because we got elections happening next year, and unfortunately, how's it, Sam? Good to see you again. I think what's going to happen is that this entire process is now literally a big fat waste of time and money, because they will not be able to conclude it by the time this parliament is almost dissolved or closed for those elections. Because the process in South Africa is that during these submissions in the National Assembly function, they have to go through certain steps and processes. Once they agree, then it moves over to what we call the National Council of Provinces, and then they have to redo this entire process and then have the debate in the National Assembly, and then if it's approved, then hand it over to the president of the country for signing. But they don't have a sufficient amount of time to even get through the National Assembly process. So I don't know if they're even going to continue with this after this next set of public hearings in Gauteng. We know that, for example, the public hearings in the Western Cape have been cancelled, but we don't know if the other provinces will be involved because they've run out of time. So I think what they were trying desperately to do is to try to push this through, at least out of the National Assembly process into the provincial process, because then they can't push it all the way back again. So, but what I was planning around all of this is to have something similar to what Nancy has done here, but have individuals come in, have their 5-minute submission as they would normally in a public hearing, and have that live on YouTube as well as all the other platforms, and then send that link as well as the recording to anybody and everybody that's willing to hear it. Obviously, at the beginning of that particular hearing, we will indicate why we're doing this, why we feel it's important to do it this way. It might not be legal, it might not be accepted, but we need to understand that the reason why we're doing this is because we don't know that these hearings actually exist, and therefore we cannot participate. So that might be something that I'm willing to look into quite earnestly, but that all will hinge off what happens this weekend, if this weekend actually happens. Because now there's a question mark whether it'll happen or not. We don't know.
Well, if you need help with that, I'll help you with that. You know that, Kurt. Okay.
Thanks, Nancy. Thank you very much.
I think it's an excellent idea. H will help you too. Yeah, because you're talking in H. It sounds like Malaysia to me. That happens so many times in Malaysia. They just get to a certain point, and then boom, an election is like, oh shit, we got to start all over again.
But Nancy, I must just say that this is not just about vaping. This is about the entire process that's happening in South Africa, because we've now got another court case that's been rejected, or that particular bill has been rejected for the very same reasons, and they had nothing to do with vaping. So it's just a general malaise and corruption of the processes that are happening in this country. And we very quickly just say, well, it's because of vaping, but it's not. It's just general. It's the general Orwellian approach to politics and freedoms in the world. It's not just vaping.
It's Asia.
You've just said that in like 5 words, and what it took me 5 sentences. Well done, Kurt. That's really good.
Yes.
I've got it written down here.
Excellent. Excellent. Send it to me. I
Good
need
man.
that.
Good man. Hey, Sam. Sam.
Hey guys.
Hi, hon.
How are you?
How are you?
Oh yeah, good. Good as I guess we can all be in the current climate.
So, Paul gave us some insight as to what's going on over there. I guess the reason we really wanted to talk to you is, did you know anything about this entire industry thing happening over here in New Zealand?
I've seen sort of the more recent changes. I saw the more recent stuff that came out. Obviously, I'm in fairly close contact with some of the New Zealand guys over there, like Vaporize and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I did hear that they were going to be changing to some fairly strict regulations in terms of like flavoring, ingredients and names and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've done that already. The flavorings, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, what else is sort of happened more recently? Is there more than just the?
Well, I mean, we've got laws changing in December about disposables, and then we've got the laws changing again next March.
Yeah, so I
but
knew
the
that they were
thing
going to
that I
ban
was
all the single-use stuff, and then they were restricting flavors to like 2. You could have 2. You could choice of 2 words in your names.
Yeah. The thing I wanted to know, were you aware that sCOPE had an expo here in New Zealand last weekend?
Yeah, so I.
What's the deal with that?
Okay, yeah, that's a really funny story. So, I heard about that about maybe a month ago, 6 weeks. Someone was like, "Hey, like New Zealand's happening again," and I was like, "What?" That's like, and they're like, "In December?" They're like, "Yeah." And I was like, "That seems like crazy short notice to like announce an expo." And then I had a chat with Morris from Vaporize, and he sort of gave me the whole rundown on what it is. And like, apparently you can't advertise or display products. It's like crazy expensive, and it's at like a laser tag place about 2 hours out of Auckland, which is just bizarre.
Chad's face. We didn't hear anything about it. We were like, I saw Mattawa posted about it. I'm like, what the hell is this?
Honestly, from the breakdown that I got, it seems like if a vape expo was organized by like Nigerian scammers, that seems like how it is set up, because you can't display products or advertise in the hall area, but it costs like thousands of dollars to have space, and then you have to pay a $50,000 deposit in case you breach the laws, and then as long as you don't do that, you get your 50 grand back at the end of the fucking thing, which just sounds super dodgy to me.
That's insane.
Yeah, so I don't yeah, I mean, apparently it is happening, but it seems very dodgy. Like, very dodgy.
Yeah. All right. I was just wondering because I asked Paul and he was like, I think Bogan knows. I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, yeah, I had a look at it. It's really weird. It doesn't seem very good for starters, and yeah, like
is it the same
seems quite
guy
expensive.
organizing it?
Hey?
Is it the same guy that's organizing it?
Well, that's the thing, is they had it listed on the SESMOL website as happening at the same, for starters, it was listed as happening at the original place that it was last time. But then that place went into insolvency right around COVID. That place doesn't exist anymore.
The showground.
Yeah, that place went bust just around COVID. So then it was like changed, like updated apparently on their website to this laser tag facility, which is like in the middle of nowhere, 2 hours out of Auckland. It seems very dodgy. Like I feel sorry for anybody who has like actually paid money and booked a spot, because you can't apparently you can't advertise or display products. So I'm not sure what you're actually going to be doing in the expo if you can't have stuff. Like if you, yeah, it's bizarre.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Vape Expo Oceania Show 2023. I see it. Oh my God, I'll have to look at that.
Okay, is that not being able to display products about it not being actually a vape shop? And so, you know how to be a specialist vape retailer, you actually have to have a physical building and it doesn't move, and, you know, all the rest of it. It's a permanent fixed structure. I bet you that's it.
It could.
I don't know, but
it
I'm
reads
on the web.
it reads like, I had a look at it, and like it reads like you can't even have like promotional material and stuff on your booth.
Yeah. If I could chime in, I have some experience in tobacco industry shows, and I remember going to a show once. We had a magazine, right? And I remember going to a show once where it was in Thailand. Yes, it was in Thailand. I remember it was the stupid place to hold a show for tobacco, but they did it in Thailand. And the deal was you can't have product, you can't have photos of product, but you can do anything else you want. Now, you know, a significant number of the people that were exhibiting there, their whole thing was product. Whether it was a cigarette or a package, you know, they do packaging. It was a trade show, right? So that was the deal, right? Now, for us, I remember we had like posters of our magazine covers and stuff. One of the, you know, a lot of them had cigarettes on them and stuff. No, got to take those down. You can't have them, but they're not actually yet photos of product, not allowed. It was because the law in Thailand, and I'm assuming it's related in New Zealand, you're not allowed to display pictures of cigarettes. You're not allowed to advertise, promote, or whatever. And that's it. So you can't have photos or product because that's marketing and it's not allowed. The interesting thing was in this particular show, Thailand Tobacco Monopoly had a massive booth, huge, massive. I mean, massive. And you'd think that the Thailand Tobacco Monopoly would have pictures of their cigarettes or, you know, some reference, however oblique to, but no, the booth was TTM, and it was basically the Department of Tourism. They had a massage in there. They had photos of beaches. They had, you know, Thai handicrafts and foodstuffs and stuff like that. Nothing to do with tobacco at all. Nothing. I mean, that was it. So I imagine that it's a similar situation insofar as the law won't allow you to have product on display because it's marketing, and they won't allow you to have photos because it's marketing, which begs the question, why bother? From a commercial
Well,
point of view.
I must admit, one of the first things that went through my head when our not our most recent lot of laws, but the ones before passed, I thought, well, that's the end of the Vape Expo, because to be a specialist vape retailer, you have to apply to the vaping regulatory authority and all this kind of stuff, and you have to have a fixed premises. You know, you can't, you know, at one point in time there was a van set up like an ambulance that used to drive around Taranaki in New Zealand, and so that wouldn't have been allowed. So the Vape Expo wouldn't have been allowed if it was actually selling any product.
Yeah. No.
Right.
And I mean, and the website's pretty scary because the website still does show the ASB, but they call it the ABS showgrounds. And it's got everything from the last expo. There's none of the new information on there. It's just like an empty website. It's really quite a cluster.
Wow.
Can I jump in and ask a question to everyone, because I think we've got a pretty good panel going here. I'd like to ask a question. I'd like to refer back to something that was talked back earlier, which was to do with how can we, we're always asking how can we increase our engagement, and I'd like to ask this question to everybody. This is my theory, and I've long espoused this, that vape stores, vape importers, people who are selling vape, importing vape, making vape, whatever. So let's call it the industry, or the vape industry, if you will, and consumers, right? We both want the same thing. We want a regulated market. We want access to a wide variety of safely manufactured devices and juices in the form of vaping, or pouches, if that's where we're going. So we all want the same thing, and I've always been perplexed as to why there isn't a much greater synergy or cooperation between vape shops, for example, and their customers. Because we all want the same thing. The customers want what the vape shop has, and they want the vape shop to be there, and they want the vape shop to have choices of product available and regulations to ensure that they're kept safe. The vape shops want the certainty of having regulations that allow them to operate so they understand what they can do and make a profit and supply the market with what the market wants. That seems just like a no-brainer that the vape industry and the consumers should be organizing themselves together, cooperating together, meaning that you should be able to walk into a vape shop, any vape shop, anywhere in the world, and the guy says, hey, have you signed up for the local consumer group here? Just sign here, or we've got a little whatever together. Here's the messaging, whatever. These are the issues. If you want to walk into my vape shop again in 6 months' time, you might not be able to because the government's proposing this. So here, sign this petition, whatever. And I don't see a lot of that. I see a lot of within the consumer sphere. I think consumer advocates, the ones that I know, pretty much they get on with each other, and then we all get it. But in an industry, I think it's because of the money, it's much more competitive. So why would I want to do something in cooperation with my competitor? Which is perhaps a function of the fact that these are not major corporations; they're entrepreneurial businesses who may not have the capacity to invest in a cooperative arrangement such as that, and may see it as a threat to their business. It isn't, but they may see it as that. So to me, I think fundamentally the answer, a significant portion of the answer to how do we get our messaging out to a wider audience, is that there needs to be cooperation, and always has needed to be cooperation between the vape industry, particularly retailers, because they are the point of contact with the customers, and the consumers, the people who actually use the product. Because while you've got the 5.3, which says, oh, the industry can't talk to whatever, they're not listening to any of us. So we might as well ramp up our efforts together cooperatively and get our message better amplified through all avenues that we have and can develop together. Nancy.
Okay, Jan will remember this. When we started up AVCA, we were very tight with the vendors and the independent industry. We helped set up the first industry association in New Zealand, okay? When the regulations came into force, everything went to hell. And the reason everything went to hell was because everybody and their grandmother was selling vape stuff, okay? The first legalization, okay? It got really competitive, and people used to get along. All the vendors used to get along. Everything was working pretty well, okay? And then it became so competitive that the vendors were fighting amongst themselves, okay? Yeah. And they didn't want what you just said, that whole competitive thing, because it's a small business, blah, 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 blah.
Same thing in Australia.
Yeah, okay. And now we're at the point here in New Zealand where if I need something, and I can go up to the girl, the local vape shop, and there's a VIANZ, which is the Vape Industry Association of New Zealand, which is the second iteration of the Independent Industry Association. Okay, and she'll be like asking me what the hell's going on, because she doesn't hear anything from VIANZ. They don't actually talk to anybody, because it's only a select group of people that are very close together that they actually work together. Okay, but they all tend to hate each other, and they just work together to forward their own interests. So if you're not a big enough company or you're not a big enough retailer, you're excluded. But yet everybody started scrapping with each other. Is basically what Mark just said. So if I need something, right? If I want to get a hold of VIANZ, I've got to call the guys at VIANZ, and then I got to wait 3 days for them to get back to me. But the only time they'll contact me is when they need something. They know I know something. So that whole thing that we used to have, that whole synergy that we used to have, is gone. And the reason it's gone is because of the competitiveness and because, everybody's scrapping with everybody else within the industry. You're right, H. It does work. Jan and I saw it in the beginning with New Zealand. It worked. Okay. But that's long gone. And I don't see, no matter how much I try or anybody else tries or little independent guys try, there's no synergy. Everybody's just too competitive. And it's really sad.
So all right, okay, I hear that. So everybody's very competitive, but the bottom line is that most shops, most retailers would have a stable group of customers walking in and out of their shop on a regular basis, right? If those customers were to say, "We want you to engage with us," a consumer group.
Now that we have so many vapors, okay. I mean, I'll go and I'll post something. Mark sees this all the time. We go and post something on like a vape group, and people are like, "What are you posting this shit for? We don't care about this." Okay, seriously, these people, they don't realize until it gets taken away from them. They do not realize what's at stake, and they don't care to realize what's at stake. There's a
Nancy.
Yeah, the average vapor, the average person that just buys, especially when it comes to like disposable users, they got no clue that their access to a nicotine product is very, very easily taken away by the government, and is potentially about to be taken away by the government. They got no idea.
They don't care, and they don't care. They only care, and this is some of the vendors as well, the bigger ones. Okay, I'm being politically correct here. Okay, the bigger ones figure they're going to be okay because they're international. The smaller ones, which are only based in New Zealand, they're the ones that are freaking out. Okay, and there's the ones that I can call up and say, "Guys, can you, I've got this petition. I need this signed, or I need this done." They'll do it. No problem, man. It's cool. It's great. But, because it's become so commercialized and because a lot of these bigger guys have actually gone international, they just disengaged from the local scene.
Yeah, but Nancy,
the consumers are disengaged from the local scene.
Nancy, it's hang on.
South Africa. All right,
it's very different. Like South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, Canada. Canada's also on the top of the list right now because they're going through the same garbage that we are. But Australia, New Zealand, we're playing in the same boat for a second. But Australia, New Zealand, Australia is going harsher than what New Zealand is. Canada, they're just imposing taxes. South Africa, they're doing the same thing. Here in Australia, they just want to outright ban like open systems. Simple. Why?
My question to Kurt was, what is the situation like between consumers and vendors, and any possibility of any synergy developing there to get some kind of cohesive?
I am incredibly proud with our small vendors, and Sam can vouch for this because he went to our vape conference not this year but the previous year, and we had a stand there that was provided to us for free, and not a single vendor, local vendor, rejected our posters and our material, and all of them had signed the petition, and all of them have created a submission, and they encourage their users. So our petition is, just under 15,000 before this process started, and I'm happy to report that our public submissions for the parliamentary process was just under 6,000, and that's because we've got a lot of very small, very vocal, or strong small vendors in the country that believe in doing it this way. But the problem is that what came in from left field was our taxation on per mil, which has forced all the consumers to move towards a disposable route rather than an open tank route, purely from a cost perspective. So it's forced a lot of the small vendors to now focus purely on disposables, but then they're competing with some of our big flag shops out there and our chain stores and petrol forecourts, and you name it, anybody and everybody that has two legs and can breathe is selling a disposable in this country. So we're now losing that opportunity to engage with our public through the channels of the vape shops, because now it's difficult for me to approach a big chain store to say, listen, would you accept my material or my posters to help us with this drive? Because they clearly won't. Because of all the red tape there. But what I've done from the word go is I've created things like WhatsApp groups where I invite any vendor, irrespective of who they are, to be part of that group, and whatever information I have or what I receive, I share onto them, and I make that call. And I've been very blessed with having a good relationship with a lot of small vendors in the country, as well as some of the very big ones. And it's about dissemination of information. But unfortunately, what we're seeing is because of this manipulation of the market through a taxation, people are no longer going to our channels where the information is. And that's making it difficult.
Yep, same here. You know, why go into a vape shop when you can go into a gas station or a petrol station and buy a Vuse?
It's a double-edged sword, because I like the idea of us as a person who smokes being able to have that kind of convenience, because it's, you know, they are open 24 hours. They don't have to travel and go find a vape shop. They can just go to one down the road and do that. So it's a double-edged sword. From a tobacco harm reductionist point of view, I like it. But in terms of having people understand what's happening to their choices, it becomes very difficult. And there's no honest arbiter from a government or health organization in the country. They're all pretty much in their own think tank or echo chamber around this. But the other thing is that what challenges South Africa is our political literacy, is that a lot of the South Africans don't understand the process and what is required. And the reality is that in some cases, or in a lot of cases, they make it difficult to engage. So a written submission needs to go through certain channels, and those channels is either via email or, you know, written in a particular thing. Even our literacy, standard language literacy, English or whatever language it is incredibly low in the country. And how many of our people in this country have access to email? So those are the other things that are challenging the public participation process, and that's why the Constitutional Court made those recommendations, or in fact didn't make the recommendations, insisted that those recommendations were followed, is because that is the only vehicle that a majority of the South Africans have, is to literally go to a location, stand in front of a mic and have their say. But if the bill is not being translated or explained in their own language, then there's no way of them being able to participate in that meaningfully. So the deck is stacked against not just vaping, but pretty much every law that's passed in South Africa. It's stacked because they exploit those limitations. They really do exploit them.
That's a really good point, man, because I'm now starting to put that to the Aboriginal community here in Australia. And yeah, now this is starting to.
So one of the major themes that I've been hearing from the public hearings, watching them on YouTube as well as attending them, is the impact of the illicit trade in South Africa. And it's now become so problematic, not just on cigarettes or vaping products, but across the board, on everything, alcohol, you name it. The illicit trade is massive. So there was a report earlier this morning saying that 50 to 60% of all cigarettes consumed in South Africa is illicit. So
It's up in Australia as well. You're looking. I mean, it's not as high as that, but you know, I can understand why it would be in a third world country as high as it is. But even in a first world country like Australia, 25% of cigarette sales now are illegal. So yeah,
the narrative, Sam, is that basically saying, well, the illicit trade is the tobacco issue. It's not the tobacco industry's issue.
It's the tax.
It's the tax.
This is what happens when you tax and put prohibition style shit on things. People say, "Fuck that! I'm going to go underground."
And if you look at a country that literally now has over 40% unemployment, you know, there's this massive secular thing that's occurring. People are unemployed, they're stressed, so forth, and they go into risky behaviors, alcohol, nicotine, smoking, so forth. They can't afford it because of the tax, and they approach underground, get it cheaper, and it just keeps, you know, rolling along. And the health groups and the governments all sitting on in their towers, pointing down, saying, "You see, it's the tobacco industry, or it's the vaping industry, or it's the alcohol industry. They are creating the situation. They should just have it all disappear, and then we will have panacea and heaven on earth." And the reality is that it doesn't happen like that. You know, the more restrictions you have, the more taxation you have, the bigger the black market is if you cannot enforce it. And South Africa and pretty much most of African continent cannot enforce the laws. They just can't.
I can't even do it in Australia, mate. What chance do you have in places like Africa?
You know,
our 2020 ban saw every single tobacco product and vape product illicit.
Yeah.
Sorry.
When you criminalize your population, you're adding a burden on every aspect of society. And if there's no, I mean, if it's like murder or theft, I get it. But if it's vaping, no, that's why buy into that problem? You know, I mean, you mentioned the illicit rate in South Africa is over 50%. It's interesting to note that some of the more prohibitionist countries have that problem. South Africa, Malaysia, over 50%. Thailand, though they don't admit it, it's over 50%, because half of all tobacco products consumed in Thailand are untaxed, unregulated, farm gate market, rolled up in newspapers, smoked in the provinces. So all the figures you see here on tobacco consumption, halve them, right? India, you know, massive problems with smuggling or what have you, because you know, it's just what it is. You get what you want, and that's the other aspect in countries that I've just mentioned. Getting what we had a saying in the Philippines, the peso has to say so, right? I mean, if you can afford it, you can do anything you want. That's what it is. In so-called first world countries, technically you can't, but we all know you can. You just have to look at any garbage bin in any high street in any country where disposables are, you know, not allowed, such as Australia, and you'll find disposables in there. They didn't just find their way there on their own. They found there through criminal syndicates, or will happily sell you anything. Anything.
What I commented earlier on in the YouTube script was to say there's that, in my mind, it appears that they wanted an illicit trade because then it gives them a justification to criminalize.
Yeah.
And if we, you know, if I just look at the language, because South Africa has such a big problem with all products being illicit, or, you know, all categories of products being illicit. One of the most striking things is if you go to what we call a flea market down the road, and you go buy a fake Gucci bag or a fake Yves Saint Laurent product or something like that, they would never, the press would never say, you see, it is the fashion industry. But when it comes to vaping and tobacco and all that, it's not everybody that sells anything to do with nicotine outside of the pharmaceutical thing falls immediately into the tobacco industry. Everything is tobacco industry. But if you look at a flea market and you go, let's say, buy fake, believe it or not, we still have them, yeah, Blu-rays and DVDs. Is that the film industry? No, it's not.
We had that discussion earlier, Kurt, about everything.
And the actual truth of the matter is that tobacco companies do not appreciate their products being, used in that way, and in many cases it presents a threat because the products that are being sold there are eating into their legitimate market.
But it's also brand reputation.
It's an ongoing problem for years, decades. And you've got all the tobacco companies there have been jumping up and down saying you've got to get this under control because this is hurting us just as much as it's hurting you.
But it's also interesting. It's also interesting. One of the most effective ways to reduce consumption is through taxation. There's no argument around that. So if you are unable or unwilling to now enforce taxation on, let's say, tobacco products, there's a double whammy here. First of all, you're losing fiscus or revenue for the state through the taxes, but also you're seeing an increase in smoking rates, which then in turn will impact the state down the line. So a simple solution by implementing, for example, Article 15 of the FCTC is a great way of achieving both those goals, but in our country they refuse to implement those things. So they rather rest on the narrative that it's the entire tobacco industry that's encouraging this illicit trade, and refuse to engage with industry and with stakeholders as to why it's not a principle process. So that's why I sit back a lot of times and think, does any of this make sense? What is the big picture here? And it all boils down to they want criminals, or they want illicit trade for criminals, so it justifies further actions.
Yep.
Kurt and Nancy, I want to ask Sam a question. If over the next 12 months, if everything gets put to bed here in Australia, what are you going to do, or where are you going to go with what you've built over the years? Are you going to keep helping people get off cigarettes, or where are you going to go, dude?
Well, I don't really have a plan B, so I'm going to try and keep fucking doing what I'm doing for as long as I can. I mean, at the end of the day, accessing products to review could become a huge issue. So, potentially there won't be an opportunity to continue to spread the word on new products. But I'm not going to stop making videos. The channel will just have to move in a different direction in terms of looking at older products, looking at how-to videos, tutorials, that kind of stuff. So still spreading the word on vaping, but I guess it'll have to be a different direction to reviewing new products. Here's
a
that's
question
at the end of
for
the
you,
day.
Sam. I mean, I'm sure, well, maybe you don't know. Do you know about the fact that the WHO and Google are working together about health information available on the internet and reviewing it and pulling stuff down, and that some people have already had their channels, booted or edited, or, they're going to make it very difficult for you to continue to be doing. So
I did hear about that. As far as I understand, as long as you're not making claims about health, as long as you're not making, because really what I think they're trying to go after is, from what I've read, I mean, I could be wrong here, but from what I've read and understand is they're trying to go after like shysters that are claiming cancer treatments and holistic bullshit about, treating illnesses. Obviously, COVID was a big thing, people making all sorts of claims about that. As far as I know, if we're, doing videos around, reviewing a vapor product or a tutorial on how to use something, that doesn't fall into the category of making claims about health or about a health issue. So you just have to be careful about, not saying, this will cure your emphysema, or, this will stop you from coughing and stuff like that, which does which is, you know, sad, because the reality is what we're doing is, you know, a healthier choice, and there is health benefits. It's all about a health benefit.
Well, I'm going to interrupt you for a minute. One of the things that I've had my daughter do for me is I have her trolling through social media and looking for the messaging at youth around vaping. And, you know, she's found, of course, those, you know, those things you're supposed to breathe into, the whistle thing, right? But one of the things, which is such bullshit, right? But one of the things that she's found, which I thought was very interesting and that is allowed and nobody's questioning, or they've come back with the inhalers with the caffeine and the herbs and the you know,
oh, really?
all that shit. That's okay. Those things keep going around and nobody's saying anything about them. So
Yeah.
it's just an interest. She gets angry. She has my temper. She doesn't look like me, but she has my temper.
Yeah, I see those ads popping up, and I'm like,
Okay.
this is some snake oil shit right here. This is some fucking snake oil shit.
Okay, but that's okay, you know, and it's interesting to me when they talk about, and I'm kind of going off piste here for a minute, but they talk about, you know, oh, nicotine is so bad, nicotine, you know, inhalation of nicotine. I don't know. Do you, in Australia, do you guys have the Nicorette inhaler things?
Yeah. Yeah, again with the whole Nicobate stuff, it's approved by the TGA, you know, so the Therapeutic Goods Administration, you know, the body that oversees you know, drugs and all that kind of stuff. They have approved the Nicobate and Nicorette brands, inhalers, the gums, the patches. So it all falls into this neat little you know, area of approved products.
But on the finer point of inhalation.
Well, see, I guess they're getting around it because there's fucking nothing in those bullshit inhalers. That you're just breathing flavor. There's nothing in it at all.
But
and they're trying to work on.
You can't have flavors. You see,
I
there
know.
has to be one thing here, right?
Yeah, exactly. They're like, you can have flavors and you can have nicotine, but you can't put them together unless they're Nicobate.
Yeah, but you only have to be 12 to buy them. Goodbye.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah,
fucking disgusting.
Australia, 12. I think in the UK as well. I think it's 12.
For these fucking air inhalers.
Yeah, NRTs. What's the law in South Africa, Kurt?
So it's actually quite interesting. So anything to do with nicotine is at 18. Anything below 4 milligrams from an NRT perspective, 4 milligrams of nicotine is considered a Schedule 0. So you can sell it anywhere and everywhere. It doesn't require a prescription, so forth and so on. So that includes pretty much any gum or lozenge. I haven't yet seen an inhaler, but lozenges, so anything below 4 milligrams is Schedule 0. It means anybody and everybody can sell it without a prescription, as used as often as you like. Patches, because of a higher nicotine strength, that requires a prescription. And in fact, one of the things that I have posted and demonstrated to policymakers to say that there's no warnings of whatsoever on our NRT packaging with regards to nicotine as an addictive substance or shouldn't be used by under 18s. You have to go into the fine print of the packaging to see that. But yeah, is 12, South Africa's 18, and depending on which parts of the states will determine that law, because that's federal.
Okay, one last topic, and then we're going to wrap up.
Sorry.
And wait, H, go ahead.
I have another question for Kurt, because I have some insights into Asia, but very few into Africa. So currently, vaping is legal or illegal in South Africa?
Well, it's a grey area. It depends on how you look at it. If you're looking at it from the first time vaping was ever expressed in law in South Africa was during the 2020 ban. And in fact, the first parts of that gazette excluded vaping, and literally a day or two later, when the Bloomies jumped up and down, the government said, oh, and that includes e-cigarettes. So that was the first time it was ever prescribed in law. Then we had the taxation, and that is for nicotine or non-nicotine liquids used for vaping. that then immediately legitimize the product. As long as you pay for it, then you can use it, irrespective of the age. So currently in South Africa, vaping is not regulated with regards to who can sell it, where it can be sold, or who can buy it. And what we've been trying to say for the longest time, even since the bill was introduced in 2018, is that no one in their right mind in South Africa rejects the fact that under 18s should have access to these products. We agree 100% that there should be an age restriction to this. There's a lot of us who will agree that a lot of the locations need to be licensed, like alcohol establishments and tobacco establishments in the country. There needs to be a license to sell it. But the focus should be more around the standards, and the focus should be more around, looking at it as part of the solution and not a problem.
That's wild that they would bring in a huge tax on nicotine vaping before they said under 18s shouldn't vape. So at the moment, basically, as long as you're paying for it, your 14-year-old can legally vape. Like, that's fucking crazy.
And it backfired
like that
huge.
too for a while. Malaysia was like that.
Sorry, can I just ask another question? So where is the South African government looking like it's trying to go now with regards to raising it out of the grey area or not?
So what we've got now is the Tobacco Products and Electronic Delivery System Control Bill, which is lumping combustible, all tobacco products and vaping products all into one bill. And I'm just going to post a definition of what smoke is referred to in the bill. So there's no distinction between them. There is a section where they'll say that there's stronger restrictions around how packaging of tobacco products would be versus vaping products. But the bill is, from a substantive point of view, is incredibly flawed. And a lot of people in the know say, well, this will never meet constitutional muster because it's not backed by, sorry guys, it's not backed by credible science. So that's what the attempt is. But unfortunately, because they have dilly-dallied on this and once again blaming interference from the tobacco industry, the reality is they just dilly-dallied on it. And they've never approached stakeholders adequately to engage on this bill. It's not going to pass within this parliamentary section. It's going to have to wait for the elections to move on, and again, it's just going to be kicked down the road. And unfortunately, to get to Sam's point around the tax, it backfired, and it backfired horribly because I was involved in those discussions. And I had calculated with what the impact would be and what it would do to the market and the manipulation of that market. And that's why we saw this massive explosion of disposables everywhere. It was because of the tax. And we started seeing the preferred is the 5% or 50 milligrams being sold everywhere. And because there's no law against who can buy and who can sell vapes, no one is legally allowed to stop a teenager from going to a shop and buying a 50 milligram disposable because the way the tax was structured. If they had structured on nicotine strengths like we had recommended, it would have been a very different story. But they refused and they went per mil, so everybody then moved to disposables. And for example, a normal Elf bar or a Voos disposable, even a Voos pod, the tax on that is R5.60. That breaks no bank in South Africa. You know, if
is that because it's not measured on the mill? It's measured on puffs or something?
No, it's measured on the mill. So it's R2.90 per mil, irrespective of the nicotine content. So that's
how do you measure the mill in a disposable, though? That's what I don't understand.
Well, yeah, you know.
Because it's a piece of foam filled with liquid. Like, how do you? But you could put whatever the fuck you want on there. How are you going to fucking measure that shit?
Sam, the other thing, it's all based on trust. So if you just put it on the box to say, no, this is 0.5 mils and it's a 10,000 puff thing, they don't have the technology or they have the capabilities of measuring that.
Yeah.
And they've made that
Yeah.
quite clear. The reason why they didn't go the nicotine route, because they don't have the facilities to test. So they just use the per mil, and then they indicate based on spreadsheets how many mils did you import. Okay, imported X amount of mils. That's the tax you have to pay. So it's a complete and utter disaster, and all that it's done, it's manipulated the situation or the market, and we now see massive, or not massive, let's be brutally honest, we've seen an escalation in youth vaping, and we still go nowhere near youth smoking rates, which is astronomical in this country, and unfortunately, that is never discussed.
I want to finish on something, guys. I don't know if you saw it in the private chat, but Kurt mentioned about how South Africa wants to change the definition of smoke, and that the definition in the bill is that smoke means inhaling, exhaling, holding, or otherwise being responsible for a relevant product or electronic non-nicotine delivery system producing any emission.
Let's breathe
now, I mean, that kind of ties into the whole WHO trying to change the definition of smoke from steam is now smoke.
I put that on purpose, Nancy, for SAM, because that gives them a justification, because the FCTC are following that same route. That gives a justification to ban all vape communication.
It's just yeah. But that goes even beyond what the WHO is doing. That goes even way beyond.
Then you'll enjoy this one.
What?
That's the definition of indoors.
Oh God, what's the definition outdoors?
Just read that, you'll understand.
Oh God, are you serious?
This is what they did in New Zealand, Jan. If you go into private chat and read
Say
it, this
that
is what
again.
they
I
did
missed
in
that.
New
What was
Zealand.
it? The definition of indoors?
This is
Enclosed
Australia.
any space covered by a roof or enclosed by one or more walls or sides, regardless of the type of material used for the roof, wall, or sides, and regardless of whether the structure is temporary or permanent. Ingredients in respect of. That's what they did in
So
New
that's
Zealand.
a bus stop. That's a bus stop.
Yep, that's Australia. That's Australia, Sam. That's a bus stop where I got
It's a
busted the
paper
other way.
towel. It's a paper towel.
No,
Yeah. You got to fold it. You got to fold it in half. Then it's a then it's got a wall and a roof.
Look, guys, I think you missed the point. That's the homeless problem solved.
Really?
Oh, Jesus.
Don't need to invest anything in that now, do we?
Oh, bollocks.
And that was one of the reasons why we this bill is incredibly problematic, because in our current scenario, in the situation that South Africa finds itself, a large portion of our majority live in informal settlements made up of informal structures. So anything can be justified as a wall or a roof.
Right. That's what they did in New Zealand. When they did the outside, like people used to go, like Jen and I would be in the tasting room and we'd go outside to vape. But, if we were under an umbrella, no.
Well, that's what the Wellington City Council tried to do. If there was an umbrella, you would be inside. Yeah. But they've just got better at it now, and they've just decided there's no vaping on council land. So if it's owned by the council, you can't vape there.
Can we start a religion that's vaping? Because I mean, that guy with the colander on his head, and he started the flying spaghetti monster religion, and then they had to leave him alone. He got able to wear a colander in his fucking passport photo, his driver's license photo. Can we just start a vaping religion, and then you can't touch us because it's religious?
Well, that's how the cannabis laws are passed in South Africa, because the Rastafarians wanted against their religion. So, and because
I identify as a smoke machine. Fucking leave me alone.
I had a friend who actually thought about doing that, setting up a charity at church, calling it the Church of the Long White Cloud. When it was illegal.
I actually did accidentally set up a religion. in my youth.
I identify as a steam train.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Sam's the Minister, Order of the Arm. Yep, all
Yeah.
good.
Oh my God.
Church of the Long White Cloud. I love it, Mark. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Okay,
what Brendan
I'm in.
came up. That was what Brendan came up with. Yeah, that's what he was going to do. He was going to set it up like that.
Yeah, Minister Bogan is going to hand
Reverend.
out. Yeah,
Reverend.
No,
Bishop.
What? Reverend.
Blessed are thee to receive the body of the cloud.
Oh fuck!
I think we've got something we can work with here. I think this is going to
Holy oil. Holy oil.
Bad. This is so bad. Oh my God.
Holy oil.
Well, guys.
Yes, indeed. The holy juice.
Guys.
Fuck you.
We're getting towards the end here. We're getting towards the end here. You know what, Paul, Bogan, if you guys want to join any of the live conversations in these 5 days, please, by all means. You're hilarious. I thank you,
keep
everybody.
the fucking language down, boys. Jesus.
Why?
Come on.
I've got my rosary here. It's just,
Sam, tell him. Go fuck yourself.
God, Paul. Everybody out there watching, forgive us. It's getting late. We've been doing this for a while.
Sorry.
They're
from Australia.
They can't help it. We'll be back tomorrow, though. Different channel. Well, same channel, but different room. Any final thoughts from anybody?
People. You mean different people, right?
Yeah, different. Well,
Yep.
I'll be here.
Sam, one thing from you.
Please, Australians, go and call your federal Greens ministers and tell them to block the fucking legislation. I'm going to be doing a video either tonight or tomorrow morning with some more details. But we have one way of preventing Mark Butthead Butler's draconian vape laws from coming into effect, and that is to get the Greens to block it at the federal level. So if you're in Australia, call your federal Greens ministers. As I said, I have a video with some more details and a link that will make it really easy for everybody. But that's our best shot, is to call the Greens and tell them, hey, look, if you support legal marijuana, if you support legal therapeutic use of MDMA and things like that, how can you let the Australian Labor Party block access to a life-saving products like nicotine through an outright ban? It's the only chance we've got. So hit those phones, guys, and call your Greens ministers. Even if you fucking don't identify with the Greens or whatever, this is your only chance, really, of saving vaping in Australia, is to get the Greens to block this legislation.
Okay, thank you for
Yeah,
that.
but one more thing, Sam. Sign off with what you normally do.
Of course, keep subboming your dicks off and your tits off, and fuck Mark Butler.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, Kurt, what do you have for us?
Well, I just, I'd like to tell everybody out there, particularly, everybody, that this is a microcosm of what the world can be expect, or what we can expect for the rest of time, is that a severe amount of control. So I know a lot of people have little empathy for smokers or vapors, or people who smoke or people who vape. But rest assured that this is a testing ground for other things to come down the line. And it's important that you do get involved. It's important that you do understand the bigger picture. It's important that you do follow not just one source of information, follow it all, make up your own minds around it. We go to great lengths to share the science and the evidence. And yes, there is a lot of middle ground that we are refused to participate in, because you'd be amazed at how much we do share in common with people that want to see smoking rates drop. In fact, we are more passionate about it, because the majority of us, in fact, all of us in this space, have seen the impact of smoking. And this is a pragmatic approach to it. It's an approach that removes criticism, it removes stigmatization, it removes ostracization. So please, just bear in mind, get involved, share, engage with posts out there. It does help. And there's a lot of truth that's not been shared. And bear in mind, once again, this is a testing ground for bigger things to come with regards to control. We've seen this with the pandemic treaties that they want to pass. We've seen it with control over social medias and what can or can't be said. It's the squashing of free thought and freedom of speeches. And with that comes all the other freedoms. So please, this is not just about vaping. This is about freedoms and choices. So get involved.
Good call, poor Kurt. Thank you for that. Yes. Jan, final thoughts?
Right. I'd probably just like to say, if there is actually anybody out there watching, and you have any influence in the conference of the parties that is supposed to happen shortly, maybe, rethink. Now, you might have seen a show here tonight that's, it's partly serious, it's a bit fun, it's a bit silly. We're just regular average people who have all managed to stop smoking by using vaping. Why would you deny that to millions of people on the planet?
Yep. Fair call. Yes, Jan. H?
Well, I was going to say what Kurt said, but I was going to take about an hour to say it. So bless you for that. Thank you. Yeah, I need more of a script writer. Yeah.
Thanks, Kurt.
Pretty much that's it. We ought to be on the same side. We're not looking for a fight here. We're looking to get pragmatic, reasonable solutions. But yes, we are up against highly draconian systems that are getting even more oppressive, and for the reasons that Kurt outlined. They want to control us. So let me just throw this out there. Suppose you gave all the vapors the vapes they want, we wouldn't be a problem anymore, would we? And you could just count us as sort of allies, maybe.
Possibly. Maybe. Very good, H. Very good.
Maybe.
And Paul, last but not least, I didn't forget you. Make it nice. Behave.
Sorry, Black Market Butler, but yeah, we're coming after you and your job. Yes, I'm being nice. I'm not going to swear at anyone, but Australia, you're doing the wrong thing. Bottom line, you're going to be left in the shadows after what we're up to in the background. Thank you for coming. Good night.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'll be back tomorrow. Probably different cast of characters, maybe some familiar faces. We'll see. And thank you, everybody, for joining me today. Thank you, H.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Sam. Everybody, thank you for watching, and we'll catch up with you tomorrow. Ciao.
Cheers.
Vape on.